Meeting is being conducted remotely in accordance with the coronavirus regulations and remote meetings protocol agreed by the Cabinet, which we will operate alongside the Council's standing orders to ensure that we continue to take democratic decisions in an open and transparent manner. I would remind you that members that this is a meeting is being streamed live to the public. Can I request that you all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you are not speaking to ensure there's no unnecessary background noise and to help with the audio and visual quality of the broadcast. Thank you. The Council's standing orders and code of conduct will apply at all times during this virtual meeting in the same way as ordinary meetings, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. Can I also remind members to ensure their chat function is switched on and to use that facility to indicate to me when they wish to speak on a particular item. Please do not speak until I invite you to do so, and remember to unmute your microphone and switch your camera on. For the benefit of everyone watching the live stream, when I invite you members to cast their votes on any particular item, they will do so electronically by using the voting facility in the chat room. The votes will be automatically counted and recorded on the system, but individual votes are not identified on the screen, and the chat room poll is not available on the live stream for public viewing. However, I will announce the numbers of votes cast for and against and any abstentions before I declare the result. As well as being broadcast live, a recorded version of this remote meeting will be uploaded onto the Council website for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided on request. The images and sounds may be recording may also be used for training purposes within the Council. Item 1, apologies. I have received apologies for the absence from the following. Councillors Mark Spencer.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just to let you know that Councillor Spencer is in. It's just apologies from Councillor Fairweather. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. Councillor David Fairweather. If there are any other apologies that need to be recorded, then please write those names in the chat box and they will be recorded in the minutes. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest at this stage? If any declarations of interest arise during the course of the meeting, then members should draw this to my attention by using the raised hand raise facility or posting a message in the chat box. Right, Mayor's announcements. As the Mayor, I'm really proud of the people of Newport. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the nurses, the doctors, the ancillaries, the farmers, the ones who work in the shops, the shop workers, everybody that's involved in working and keeping this country going. Thank you very much. And also, I'm going to walk in April from Newport to Cardiff. Thank you. Right, item 2. The minutes from 26 January 2021 are before us. Are there any points of actual accuracy?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Yes, Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just in reference to questions to the Leader of the Council, and where I was talking about benefits of a new M4 Reef Road, and the references there is to the World Conference Centre. I was actually talking about the International Convention Centre at the Celtic Manor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Duly recorded. Thank you. Are there any points of accuracy agreed? Well, I move the minutes as a true record. Is that a seconder?
Happy to do that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mudd. Will all those in favour please indicate by clicking on the voting application in the chat box. I will give all members a short time to cast their vote. Thank you.
There's nothing in the chat box for us to vote on, Mr. Mayor.
I can't see it either. No.
it'd be easier if there's any objections, perhaps people could
Yeah,
speak.
okay. Thank you. Are there any objections? Nothing. Okay. The approval of the minutes is due.
Which is the voting box? Right, okay.
Nothing's required at this stage. Thank you, Councillor Morris. Thank you.
Excuse me.
You okay? Right.
Proceed, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 3, appointments. Councillor Harvey to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All the appointments are in the pack that's been handed out to all councillors. There are a few amendments, one being that, shut that down. I need to ask for approval for Councillor Critchley's continued absence beyond the 6 months due to his ongoing ill health for the purposes of Section 85 of the Local Government Act 1972.
Excuses to revisit.
I think either Councillor Routley or Councillor Evans are
Yeah.
going to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, that's right. Councillor Harvey will move the appointments. Hang on, excuse me, I'm talking, please, excuse me. Councillor Harvey will move the appointments in the report and any additions, and Councillor Bill Routley is second them. Thank you.
I formally second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Routley. Would all councillors please cast their vote by now clicking on the appropriate box in the chat function. I will give all members a short time to cast their vote before confirming the result. Thank you.
Very sorry, Mr. Mayor, but there is no chat function that is showing.
Nor on mine.
That is on mine, Mr. Mayor, so
It is available, yes.
again, it may be easier if anyone objects to maybe
It's just
make
come
that
through,
notice.
Mr. Mayor. Sorry to interject. There's a delay in this coming through, but it's just come through.
Could you please remind us of what we are voting, Mr. Mayor?
We're voting on the appointments in the pack that you've got in front of you, and also for the continued 6-month approval for Councillor Critchley for his ongoing ill health.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question on this, please?
Yeah. Who's that speaking,
Is it
please?
a point of order, Mr. Mayor?
Point of order. It's a point of order.
I'd just like to ask a question.
Is it a point of order?
Potentially, yes.
Well, if it's a point of order, Councillor Morris, you can ask it.
Is there a realistic possibility of Councillor Critchley returning to a full and active
It's not a point of order, Mr. Mayor.
No, it's
Point of
not.
order. Sorry, Alan. Sorry, I've been told.
And I say that with all respect to Councillor Critchley, who is a very decent man.
Alan, sorry, it's not a point of order, please. Sorry, thank you.
Shameful, Alan.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm glad you think that.
Excuse
Absolutely.
me. Excuse me. Could you stop back chatting, please? This is the council meeting. It's important. Thank you very much. Thank you. There are the votes. I can't see the votes at the moment.
27 for and 2 abstentions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if you scroll down, it'll be at the bottom of the chat box.
It's 93% in favour, Mr. Mayor.
Okay then. Well, I've got it on my box. Let me submit that. Excuse me a moment.
If you scroll down to the bottom of the chat box, Mr. Mayor, you'll see the results there.
Right, okay. Right, okay, yeah. I got the percentages, not the how many votes, right. There's 93% for and none against and 2 abstain, sorry. So it's 29 for and 2 abstain, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And can I just add that comment from Councillor Morris was made with very distasteful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, yes. So can we strike that from the minutes, please? It wasn't a point of order. Thank you. Therefore, the appointments are duly carried. Okay. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Rowley, do you second the motion, please?
It's already been seconded, Mr. Mayor, and it's been voted on.
Well, I didn't hear Bill, sorry.
Yeah, it was a composite motion, if you remember. Councillor Harvey moved both the appointments and the dispensation, and Councillor Routley seconded both.
Well, I only asked for the one. So.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, if it helps, yes, I second the both the motions of Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you. Right, if we're going to do it right, we'll do it right.
Yes, you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Routley.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Thank you. Right, number 4, police issues, please. I'm pleased to welcome Superintendent Mike Richards to the meeting. May I remind members that if they wish to put any questions to Superintendent Richards after his presentation, then please use the raised hand facility in the chat box, and I may invite you to speak in the order indicated. Thank you. Leader, Councillor Mudd, would you like to speak, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we need to give Superintendent Richards the opportunity to give us an update before we...
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. Superintendent Richards first.
Okay, fine. Okay, sorry. Sorry, Jane. Okay, Superintendent Richards. So over to you, please.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's really good to be here. I know that Tom Harding and I have missed the last couple of meetings because our IT has failed to connect to your IT. So I've decided to come to the Civic Centre and sit in a room so I could brief you and take your questions. So I hope you can all hear me okay. I'll deliberately keep my updates and presentation very brief this evening because I have no doubt that some of you will have had questions for the last meetings that you may want to ask me now. So I'll keep my bit brief and then I'll take your questions straight after. We're quickly approaching the end of our financial year, like many organisations, and it gives me an opportunity to reflect on where we are in terms of some of our crime performance and share with you perhaps some of our crime reductions in the last 12 months, some of which I know will be down to some of the COVID restrictions and lockdown, but there are certain updates I'd like to give you that will maybe set out some context to some of the things I'll talk about and maybe some of the questions that you may have for me. So in terms of just some high level highlights around our crime reductions in the last 12 months, and I think they're important to talk about. We have seen a significant reduction in violent crime across the city and wider, and that reduction has been about 24%. So 582 fewer violent offences across the city, which I think is something to be celebrated. Likewise, vehicle crime, a significant reduction in vehicle crime in the last 12 months compared to the previous 12 months. That reduction, again, around 25%, which is 391 fewer offences compared to the same period last year. Again, reductions in residential burglary and significant reductions in robbery, 13% reduction in robbery, probably about a reduction of 35 offences on that same period the previous year. And I'll pause on the robbery figures because some of you will be aware, no doubt, that we have seen in recent months some concerning knife-related crime knife-related robberies across the city, across the east and the west of the city. And I think it's important to tell you, from where I'm sat, a lot of those victims know who their offenders are. So the victims are known to their offenders. In a lot of those crimes, those victims are unwilling to cooperate with a police investigation. So very often they're unwilling to give a witness statement and tell us exactly what has happened, which makes our job that much more difficult. But I think it's important to set out the context behind some of those concerning knife crimes that you will have seen in the press and heard about from members of your community. I wanted to touch upon drug dealing across the city, something that we often talk about in full council, and very often you challenge me on what we're doing. Only last month, early February, we executed 7 simultaneous drugs warrants across the city, arresting 9 people and recovering 1 kilogram of Class A drugs. That's a significant amount of drugs. And that was a result of months and months of planning, painstaking investigation. And very often when I'm challenged by members of our community who say that we're not acting and responding quick enough, very often it's because there's a bigger picture. And sometimes, you know, those calls are very useful because they form part of the jigsaw. You know, and let's not underestimate the impact that those 9 arrests will have, because dismantling an organised crime group will have a massive impact right across the city. The second thing I wanted to touch upon is the work that we've been trying to focus on around sex workers, particularly in the pill area of the city. In recent months, we've had an operation targeting that particular problem, and there have been 2 distinct strands to that operation. The first one is working closely with partners to try and support the vulnerable young girls that are engaged in that work. And that is important. We have to do that. We have to support them. They are very vulnerable. So that has been the first strand. The second strand that I know you'll be keen to hear is us getting tough on the people that use their services, the curb crawlers. And I'm really pleased to say that in the last few months, we have arrested well over 30 people for using the services of sex workers in Pill. And the majority of those have been charged and put before a court, a lot receiving fines of between £700 and £800. So, you know, that some real positive work there, and that work will continue, and we will continue that work across the city in terms of drug dealing, and of course the sex worker problem that very often you raise with me at these meetings. Other things that we have seen in the last few months, off-road biking continues to be a problem, and I was speaking to Inspector Corley in the east of the city this afternoon, and he was updating me on some of the plans that he has around the nuisance caused by off-road biking. We have seen resident concerns around dog thefts, and that isn't an issue that is exclusively a problem for Newport. That is right across Wales at the moment, and we are looking very closely at that problem, and we're asking people to be vigilant and to report anything suspicious to us, and we can act upon it. But that is something that's certainly on our radar. And of course, we all hope in the coming months that we will be slowly moving out of the restrictions that have been with us now for some time. And we are working closely with our partners in the council and other agencies on what our plans will look like when the bars and the restaurants start to open. And I can give you some reassurance that there is a policing plan and a plan with our partners to ensure that we've got the right resources in place for when those lockdown restrictions are eased. And some of that will be around diversionary activities for young people, but that's very much part of our planning. And the final thing, and I've been in a meeting this afternoon with residents from the Peterstone area, Some of you will be aware of ongoing fly tipping issues, dumping issues in the Marshfield, Peterstone, Wentloog areas, and some of you will be aware of a monthly partnership stakeholder meeting that I chair. And I'm really pleased to say that we're making a lot of progress in that meeting in terms of certain planning issues there, and the council have really done an awful lot of work in terms of injunctions in that area. So that work will continue. I'm going to bring my updates to a close there. Those were the key things I wanted to share with you, but I'm conscious there may be many questions that you have for me because I haven't been here for the last 2 meetings. So I'm gonna pop myself on mute, and I'm here to take questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mike. Leader, can I invite you to say a few words before we commence with police questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome, Superintendent Richards. It's very good to see you here again today. I'd like to start, Superintendent, by thanking you and the officers for the partnership working in relation to the work that we've been doing around enforcement of the COVID regulations. This really is a true example of partnership working. And within this, I think it's really important to emphasise that a lot of the work around this has really been about educating and informing people, really giving people good advice and supporting them rather than penalising them. That said, however, where there has been blatant abuse of these and restrictions and breaches of the regulations, your officers have stepped in and they've really made a difference. So I'd really like to thank you for that on behalf of the city. Speaking of the city, colleagues, and this is an appeal to my colleagues on the call rather than yourself, Superintendent. All colleagues within the council will be aware of an issue, an incident that has happened in Newport that is currently under investigation by the IOPC. Now, colleagues, you'll be aware of the information that I sent out to you on this particular issue. As this is a matter which is currently under investigation, could I please ask you all to refrain from raising any queries today whilst Superintendent Richards is here, because whilst the matter is under investigation, it's not a topic we should invite him to discuss. So colleagues, if you can respect that request, that would be very helpful. Finally, Superintendent Richards, I'd just like to say at the local level how refreshing it was for myself and my ward colleagues to meet up with Sergeant Paul Turner. What a great addition to our local area policing team he is, and I look forward to a constructive and productive working relationship with him. He was excellent, very full of good ideas, full of enthusiasm, and really committed to partnership working at the local level. So if you could feed that back, that would be great. Thank you, Superintendent.
Thanks for that kind feedback and saying those few words. I'm very grateful to you. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you, Leader. We will now start on police questions. Councillor Majid Rahman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Superintendent, I spoke with Martin Crawley about this issue. I'm not sure if he's brought it up, but just to give you some background information, in my ward, specifically around the Harrow Road area, Rugby Road and Bedford Road area, there's been ongoing issues with regards to parking spaces. Now, I've been in contact with the council about this, about neighbours, residents reserving parking spaces using bins and other items, and I know the council, specifically Street Scene, have been in contact with those residents. However, the police issue is the fact that a lot of this has now become physical in nature and fights have broken out onto the street. Now, my worry is that this is going to escalate further. I've had residents actually come to my house, because I literally live around the corner, knock on my door in the evening because they've just had an argument or fight with one of their neighbours. Now, as I said, I've been in contact with Inspector Corley about this, and he suggested having a community day, and we did have one on Morris Street a few months ago. I believe that was just before the lockdown, and we had use of the community van, I believe. I'm not sure the exact name for it, and we had a number of officers and PCSOs attend as well. I was just wondering, I know resources are tight, but if I can get some reassurances from you, Superintendent Corley, if you would allocate some resources towards the main police station in making sure Inspector Corley can have one of those community days on Harrow Road, so visibility is shown, and that we can address some myths around reserving parking spaces. I know other authorities have had similar issues, and it's not an issue just to Maindy alone or Victoria Ward alone, but I know in other police authorities they've used fines. I'm not suggesting that we use fines, but I'm just suggesting that we have a community approach to stop any escalation of violence. Well, there has been violence, to stop any further escalation of violence. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks for raising that with me, Councillor. Inspector Corley hasn't mentioned it to me yet, but I know that you have previously raised this very issue previously at this forum. So I will speak to Inspector Corley first thing tomorrow morning. I'm very sorry to hear that those problems have escalated into physical violence, which is very concerning for me. I will meet with Martin tomorrow morning, and I will ensure that he has the appropriate resource to deal with the problems that you've raised. Thank you for raising it with me tonight.
I've lost my box, I'm sorry. Anne?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Jevons is next.
Yeah, okay.
Can I assure everybody that you are on the list? I will make a note of it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can't see it, Anne, so can you, Councillor Roger Jevons, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Superintendent Richards, and a nice welcome to see you back with us on camera. I know it's difficult with these Teams meetings, but nice to see you. Superintendent, I just wanted to put on record my thanks for your intervention in the Cromwell Road, Oliver Road, Hampden Road area regarding the ongoing antisocial behaviour and increasing levels of antisocial behaviour in and around that area, especially with youths that are in some cases intoxicated. But it was just a thanks to say that in Martin Corley's leave of annual leave that you've intervened in that. I see that Martin Corley has replied to me this morning, and we'll look forward to some more police presence and action being taken in that area. Thank you, Superintendent.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Jevons. I'll keep it brief. I've been briefed by Martin now and the Sergeant Candy, who's the neighbourhood sergeant. Now that I'm aware, I can make sure that the appropriate resources are down with you in Cromwell Road and Oliver Road. But thank you for raising it with me on Monday evening. I'm grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jevons. Councillor Laura Lacey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Superintendent Richards. Last week, teenagers got into the grounds of Ringland Primary School and proceeded to set alight the external wooden playhouse. Fortunately, it didn't touch the main building, but they were caught on CCTV camera afterwards, sitting on the play train and having a great laugh watching it burn down. As you're probably aware of, a few weeks before, the open hearth was set on fire several times over the weekend. A few weeks before that, it was set on fire. Going back into the summer before, we have a blight of bins being set on fire behind the shops and behind Milton Court. And a number of years before that, we had a massive fire at Bishop Hall Dairy. It's a complete miracle that nobody has been, seriously injured or property's been seriously damaged. Myself and Councillor Linton have, obviously discussed this, and it seems to be that they seems to be following a similar pattern each time. And we're just wondering if you're any closer, or if obviously Martin Crawley's any closer in finding out who's doing this, because as we said, it's by sheer miracle that gas canisters or things haven't exploded, and the school didn't burn up to the ground really. So we just appreciate your help, and obviously, you know, maybe once this COVID is out of the way, we can get some communication or somebody into the schools to explain the, you know, the sheer problem with, you know, potentially setting yourself alight really with these fires. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for raising it. All very concerning issues. I mean, I was aware of the Open Hearth fire. I wasn't aware of the issues you've described in Ringland Primary. We're really keen to know what Inspector Corley's done with the CCTV opportunities, and I will raise that with him tomorrow to find out where he is in terms of identifying the offenders for that. But it's on my list of things to discuss with Martin tomorrow morning. He'll have a busy morning with me. And I or Martin will get back to you with an update in terms of the identification of the suspects. And I will make sure, again, as I've said to previous questions, Martin and his neighbourhood team are engaged in that area, and we will update you in the coming days, Councillor Lacey.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Debbie Davis, please. Councillor Davis. I don't think we can get on with that one. Can we go to
the next name in the list, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I'm going to now. Councillor Kevin Whitehead, please.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if it's information for you, Councillor Marshall, but there's a lot of us dropping out on and off on Teams this evening. I don't know, at the bottom it seems that a lot of the other people are likewise doing the same, so just to advise you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Marshall, thank you. Okay, well, we try Councillor Tracy Hallio, please.
I'm back in, Mr. Mayor. I make my time.
Okay, yeah, could you go now then, please? Councillor Kevin Whitehead, please. Sorry,
Tracy. Is that okay, Mr. Mayor? Can you hear me clearly and see me?
Yes, I can hear you now, thank you.
Typical, crashed again. Cheers, Superintendent. Hope you're good. Thanks for all you do within our ward in particular. Just a quick one. We have a fabulous bunch of ladies on Bettis who formed this group, and they're called the Archers. I love it. And they do their little bits of intel for us. And at the moment, what's in their sights is, you may well be aware of it, there's a field adjacent to Rougemont, just off Bettis, to the school behind Rougemont. I know there's been an open-ended, angry discussion, shall we say, between various, like the council, rangers, the school themselves. But this group of dedicated scramblers and free riders have totally ignored all efforts to try and, you know, stop them doing what they're doing there. Today, again, I noticed it's been like a racetrack all day. And bearing in mind, we now have the nice weather to come. So I'm mindful that with the nice weather approaching, the lighter nights, this will be yet again another season, a bugbear, particularly for the residents in close proximity. And also the poor kids in that school doing their learning, because it also happens during school time. So I'm just hoping, could we just formulate a concerted effort there to at least address it by putting large boulders, whatever, but there needs to be a better conversation around sorting out the entire issue there. Cheers, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Whitehead. You're right to raise it. You know, we have seen an increase in antisocial behaviour, certainly since last weekend, since the weather has broken. You know, the nights are getting lighter, and of course, as I said in my introduction, you know, there'll be hopefully an easing of those COVID restrictions. So you're right to raise it with me. Last year and the year before, we launched Operation Harley, which was an off-road specific operation. And we will commit to that again now in the coming months. We usually launch it around now in the springtime, so I will make sure that the local team over in the west of the city launch Operation Harley, and we will be visible at peak times, and again work with our partners in the council to see if we can do anything around the boulders that you highlighted. So it's on my list of things, and I will take that back to the team tomorrow morning.
Much appreciated.
Thank you. Councillor Tracy Hollyoak, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Chief Superintendent. Good evening. I'd like to actually congratulate you guys, firstly on the work you've done around street workers. The fines have been very well welcomed and received well by the community. They'd like reassurance that will keep intensifying and the curb crawlers will continue to be targeted. I'd also like to raise around COVID, I'm glad the leader brought it up, the incidents we're having with huge numbers of people on the streets dealing. We've had incidents with people outside the Melbourne 999 calls was responded to. I had vulnerable residents locked in houses around the. I'm interested to know, and I wanted to know why groups of people are allowed to congregate like this through COVID.
There were some comms issues my end then, Councillor, but I think I caught the point that you were making. First of all, can I just extend my thanks to you and Councillor Hyatt for your support that you've shown me and my officers in recent months with some of the issues that we've been experiencing in Peel. You've been very, very constructive in your feedback, and I'd like to thank you both, you and Councillor Hyatt, for your support. I think the question that you were asking was around groups of people on Commercial Road breaching COVID restrictions. That's what I thought. And I've seen it myself. You are right. And of course, you know, we want to try and engage and encourage people to observe those rules. There comes a time when you have to use enforcement, and that is the message to Inspector Williams and his team, that if there are groups of people in Pale on Commercial Road congregating and they haven't heeded the warnings, we're quite within our rights to use the enforcement. And I've taken that message back to the local policing team, and that is what, those are my expectations, that if we've tried to encourage people and we've engaged appropriately and they haven't taken on board the warnings, my message to the team is to use the enforcement that is open to them. So I will make sure I reinforce that message and take back your feedback, Councillor Hollyoak.
Thank you, Superintendent. That's great.
Thank you. Councillor Laura Lacey was seventh, but she's asked a question already. So can we go to Councillor Matthew Evans, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Superintendent has already had notice of this question. Without wishing to go into detail of any specific case, I understand when possible charges are referred to the Crown Prosecution Service, they can recommend lesser charges than could be expected. For instance, a charge of robbery and assault might be reduced to just theft. This can understandably lead to frustration and anger for the victims, the public, and indeed the police. I appreciate you can ask the CPS to review this on some occasions, but is there anything we can do as a council, subject to member agreement of course, to ensure victims of crime receive appropriate justice?
Thanks, Councillor, and thank you for raising this question with me some weeks ago. You are right. You know, the overwhelming majority of cases that we deal with, we have to seek the advice of the Crown Prosecution Service in bringing about charges, which is very different to how it used to be when I was a young officer. We would make the decision ourselves. These days, there are very few offences that we make that decision. So we would put a file of evidence together to the Crown Prosecution Service and ask them to bring about the appropriate charges. On occasions, you know, there's a disagreement, and we think, you know, sometimes that a more serious offence should be laid before the court, and that can be frustrating, and it can be frustrating when equally the Crown Prosecution Service don't advise a charge, and they say there isn't sufficient evidence. Those cases, I'm pleased to say, are few and far between, but when they happen, and I know the details about the case that Councillor Evans is referring to, they are frustrating for everybody. They're frustrating for the victim, they're frustrating for us, and of course, you as elected members. So I suppose, I mean, you know, the example that you're talking about, and maybe some others, we'd be more than happy to pick up a conversation with you, Councillor Evans, and any support that you think you could lend, we would gratefully receive. So more than happy to pick up a conversation with you outside this meeting and take any support you and your colleagues could offer.
Thank you very much.
Right, sorry, I've lost it again. Sorry, Rob.
Mr. Mayor, can Councillor Deb Davis and Councillor Armquami have their turn?
Yes, well, Councillor Deb Davis, please. Can you speak, please? No.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for being so tolerant of me. My internet went down. I suspect it was my son's play station that had a dramatic negative impact. I've sorted it now. It got switched off. Good evening, Superintendent Richards. It's good to see you. We remain in lockdown and have done so since mid-December, and it's been stipulated and made clear that political parties in Wales should not leaflet nor door knock until restrictions have been lifted. And indeed, South Wales Police recently cautioned a politician in Cardiff for flouting those regulations. Can I ask if Gwent Police are going to take a similar line with an established political party that exists in Newport, who in mid-January not only delivered a leaflet to residents in Newport East Ward, but made it clear that they had very recently actively walked the streets to gather the evidence that they needed in order to make their political points? Thank you, Superintendent.
Thanks for that question. I'm not aware of the incident that you're referring to, or any wider issues. But if you want to share with me your concerns, we can look at it very clearly, speak to the Crown Prosecution Service as per my previous answer, and see what offences have been committed. But I would be grateful if we could maybe pick up a conversation. I could understand exactly what has happened, and if offences have been committed, then we would seek advice from the Crown Prosecution Service. So it would be good to catch up with you, Councillor Davis, and understand exactly what has happened.
Certainly, Superintendent. I've got the information. I'll certainly pass it on to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Debbie Harvey. Councillor Aniami wants to speak. Do you think you could speak first, please, Councillor Harvey?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and good evening, Superintendent Richards. Congratulations on all the good work you are doing against drug crime and all that. But my question really is prompted by two reasons. One is a ward issue. The other one is representation from Black, Asian and minority ethnic groups regarding the stop and search reports that have been out in the last couple of months. There was one in November of last year, and then another one in December after that, and both of them paint really quite a worrying picture in the Gwent police area and Newport. I think the first report talks about, you know, when it comes sort of to people of a Black ethnicity, you know, we have the stop and search has sort of, you know, the ratio is 31.8, while really for white people is only 3.8, that's 1/10. And when it comes to the, you know, sort of other minority ethnic groups as a whole, is 20 compared to 3.8 for white people. So obviously I can understand their concerns about this. Then the report that was published in Wales Online in December, you know, is of particular interest to me, and I'm sure to some of the other wards, in that Stowe Hill stood as a really very high rate compared to the, you know, it topped by a mile, as it were, because 60 per 1,000, when you compare about 16 other wards are below 10. Pill came at 21 and Victoria came at about 18, I think. So really these are worrying statistics, and because they appear disproportionate for, you know, Black, Asian and minority ethnic groups compared to white people, obviously people feel, you know, are they being targeted here? You know,
Councillor Nuami,
injustified here.
Sorry, the time is up now.
The questions now. I'll come to the question.
Time is up now, sorry. Could you send a written answer to Councillor Migdad Ali-Army, please?
Mr. Mayor, can I just very quickly, I am the force strategic lead for stop and search and use of force. I will arrange a meeting with you, Councillor, because the figures that you've articulated are not figures that I recognise.
Okay.
And as the force lead for stop and search, I know exactly what the race disproportionality rate is for every single ward in Gwent area. So my offer to you is a face-to-face meeting where I can talk you through any disproportionality concerns that you have.
Yes, I welcome that, Superintendent, and yeah, I was going to put the 2 questions, but I'll wait to put those questions. If I may just summarize.
Sorry, the meeting's over, sorry. Sorry,
Okay.
the meeting's over, sorry.
Okay, that's fine. So yeah, I look forward to that, Superintendent. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Superintendent Mike Richards, for participating in the police issues. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Item 5, notice of motion, M4 Relief Road. Councillor Matthew Evans is going to introduce the item and formally move the motion. Matthew Evans, Councillor Matthew Evans, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I think it's fair to say, and this is not a political point, we have had numerous directives, strategies and acts which we've been asked to implement by the Welsh Government. You can't approve a household extension without considering its impact on the Welsh language or the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, for instance. So this is a golden opportunity for us to ask the Welsh Government to do something they're always telling us to do. At our last council meeting, we all supported a motion which stated this council is committed to improving democracy. So what better way to do it than this? This would give the Welsh Parliament an opportunity to debate the benefits of engaging with the electorate on an issue that affects everybody across the city. It's worth remembering that after a lengthy public inquiry by the Independent Commission set up to look at the advantages and disadvantages of an M4 Relief Road, came to its conclusion that it should go ahead, the decision was not taken to the then Assembly for debate. Instead, the First Minister took it upon himself to go against their recommendations without a single vote being cast. As we all know, the Local Government and Election Wales Act places a duty on us to find new and better ways of engaging with the public. Some might say we have elections to decide on such matters, but this crosses the political divide. I know Labour Party members in favour of a relief road and Conservative members opposed to it, although not many admittedly. We have all knocked on doors and had the response, it doesn't matter who I vote for. It doesn't make any difference. You're all a waste of space. Need I go on? But as we saw with the Brexit referendum, the turnout was a huge 70%. Compare that with the last Assembly elections at 45%, or the local elections in Newport around 36%. Ever since I was elected back in 1999, which seems a long time ago now, this council has always supported an M4 relief road. From Sir Harry Jones, Bob Wright, myself, Baroness Wilcox, and indeed the current leader have been committed to the project. Assembly members, with one exception, and the late MP Paul Flynn, have passionately put forward its case. You might ask about the cost of holding one, but I suggest it would be pennies for the Welsh Government, and in any case, what is the price of democracy? You might also ask, what is the point of holding a non-binding referendum? And the answer to that is simple. It would show the strength of feeling of our residents one way or another. I'm not being funny, but anyone can just sign a petition without knowing the full effects of it. But this would be different, setting out the pros and cons for all to see, and most importantly, in a non-political way. This is not the time for petty politics or point scoring. This is a real opportunity to say actions speak louder than words, and that we, the elected members in the city of democracy, are leading the way in listening to the voices of Newportonians. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Matthew Evans. Councillor Routley, do you second the motion?
Mr. Mayor, I formally second the motion and reserve the right to speak later in the debate. Thank you.
Does any member wish to propose an amendment?
I'd like to propose an amendment, please, Mr. Mayor.
Certainly, thank you.
I would like to as well, please, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
I could second the Labour amendment, please, Mr. Mayor.
Well, we need to hear the amendment first, Mr. Mayor. We'll deal with one amendment at a time, so we'll wait for Councillor Townsend later, but we'll deal with Councillor Mudd's amendment first.
Yeah, okay, please.
Before we go ahead, I can see, Mr. Mayor, that Councillor Evans has put a point of order in the chat box.
Okay, Councillor Evans, may I ask your point of order, please?
Yes, yeah, of course. I'm sorry, I might be being a bit sort of naive or whatever. It's point of order stroke clarification. So as I understand it, we're proposing a referendum on an M4 relief road. I mean, like which one? Because there are a couple of proposals. So which route are we suggesting that we build? You know, if we're going to ask the general public in a referendum to approve or not an M4 relief road, we surely need to know like where the road is going to go.
For clarification, Mr. Mayor, I can help. The black route. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, okay.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Thank you, Chris Evans.
Okay, can I proceed, Mr. Mayor?
Okay, yes, Councillor Mudd, yes.
Right, I'm going to see if I can. So I've just inserted the proposed amendment in the chat box, Mr. Mayor. Okay. Would you like me to read it out to colleagues?
Yes, I can't see it in my chat box, sorry.
Okay. If you scroll down, Mr. Mayor, perhaps it'll come up. There is a slight delay, isn't there? I'll start reading and you let me know whether you've received it, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
So the proposed amendment is Newport City Council has always acknowledged public opinion regarding an M4 relief road around Newport. We recognise that we must act today for a better tomorrow. This council asks the Welsh Government to carefully consider any calls for an advisory referendum or other public consultation within the Newport Local Authority boundary area within the context of social, economic and environmental factors which underpin the well-being of future generations, Wales Act 2015.
Thank you, Leader. Is there any seconder for the amendment, please?
Yes, Mayor, Councillor Hughes.
Councillor Jason Hughes. Are there any comments on the amendment?
Can I speak to it now, Mr. Mayor?
Certainly, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Well, I was very interested, Mr. Mayor, to read the amendment, to read the motion that has been put to the council today. Because to be quite honest, there's not a member of this council who hasn't sat in traffic for a long period of time, experiencing the congestion and wishing that there was a better way. Not one of us. Now, we've always listened to our residents' views on the M4 here in Newport. We've tried to find a better way. We've had a public inquiry, a commission, and we've had an opportunity to have our say many times. COVID has changed our lives. There's no going back. We can change our lives for the better. The way we live, the way we work, this has all changed. And we've all had plenty of time to think and to think again. This afternoon, the Chancellor of the Exchequer set out his 3 fiscal principles. He included in this taking advantage of lower interest rates to invest in capital projects. The Conservative Chancellor has announced bringing forward investment in city deals, investing in green technology, a hydrogen production centre in Holyhead, and a new rail technology centre in Port Albert. That makes me wonder, Mr. Mayor, where is the UK government investment in South East Wales? The UK Prime Minister, when addressing the UN Security Council, spoke of the need to address both the causes and the effects of climate change. £1.5 billion on a road won't achieve this. There's an opportunity here for the UK government to support a green recovery in South East Wales through investment in rail infrastructure. At our last council meeting, I called on the UK government to invest in rail, to work with us, to work with Newport City Council, to work with the Welsh Government. Fiscal responsibility is key. They're not my words, they're the words of the Chancellor of the Exchequer. If we're to be responsible and to build a responsible recovery, a costly referendum is not the answer. We need to invest wisely, and that investment, Mr. Mayor, needs to be in infrastructure. Our Cabinet here in Newport City Council has agreed a responsible budget for a responsible recovery, a green and just recovery. We're prioritising people and investing in place. We're setting the foundations for a green and just recovery, a responsible recovery for all of us. We've all had plenty of time to think and think again, and now is the time to take Newport forward. Let's build back from the pandemic, and let's build a Newport for everyone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, Councillor Kevin Whitehead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Both laudable comments, I have to say. First and foremost, as regards investment and whatnot, hasn't Boris already promised to pay for it just a few months ago? Besides the point, coming back to the call for a referendum, again, it's well intended, but I mean, we're a lone local authority whereby somebody's calling for this. I think it would have more about it. There'd be more meat on the bone if authorities across Wales kind of joined up with this thinking and that they all were demanding this type of referendum. I just think, well, it's just Newport City Council calling for something like this, and we all fully support it. I travel the M4 twice daily. I see the reality of parked cars. We're on about a green city. It's a car park and people revving their motors in Newport. Thousands of vehicles. I just find the whole thing quite comical at times. myself and my colleagues would be sat in the car and saying, look at this, we're on about having the green of this and green of that. Everybody's revving their cars stuck under gantries. People are slamming brakes on because they keep looking at the gantries. They've made lots of monies off the cameras. I find that quite ironic. But yeah, most of the time, if you get one bump on there, it does become a giant car park of revving engines. And that's clearly not good. But going back to the investment and stuff, the leader is quite right, obviously. But also, Boris did threaten to pay for it. And we laughed at him, apparently.
Thank you. Mr. Price. Mr. Price, can I have Price?
Yes.
Mr. Councillor Jason Hughes wants to have the right to speak. Is that allowed?
Yes, he reserved his right when he seconded the amendment, so he can speak at any time during the debate, and the leader will have the right to reply at the end.
Would you like to speak at
Can I reserve the right to speak at the end, please, Mr. Mayor?
Okay. But any other wants to talk about the debate on this motion, please?
Yes, please. Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I just put something there. You know, the old notion that that we're discussing here, pre-COVID, I've asked dozens of questions trying to promote a green agenda. Some of those have been adopted by the council, which I'm very grateful for, like a bee-friendly city and more electric charge points. You know, I'm an hypocrite, but you know, if it is to be the black road, you know, the black route, we're actually in a climate crisis. You know, so what are we going to do? We're going to tear up trees, kill habitats, demolish parts of our heritage, living levels. It's been called by leading environmentalists a joke, government-sponsored ecocide. Do we want to be part of that after all we've been through, when we've had time to reconnect with our nature and our environment? You know, we can't carry on making the same mistakes. Even a basic understanding of climate change will tell you this isn't a great idea. Can't complain about air quality in one breath, however good the videos are, and then add to it in the next breath by increasing freight on the roads. And, you know, you could make the argument for that electric vehicles will replace, but it takes 30 years for the dividend from electric vehicle to be paid back in terms of environment. So, you know, that isn't a good one. A clever man once said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We can do better. People are going to be working from home more often after COVID. We don't have to look back, you know. We're building more roads, you know. Let's give our kids, it's all very well and good us voting to be a bee-friendly city. It's all very well and good us declaring a climate crisis. Let's create a Newport that we're going to be proud to hand on to our cities, a city that we're going to be proud to add on to our children. Please, you know, let's look to the future and not have the tired arguments of the past.
Are there anybody else who wants to take part in the debate, please? Councillor Jason Hughes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the costs associated with the M4 Relief Road was anticipated by some to reach a staggering £2 billion. In January 2018, 2 Welsh politicians called on the Welsh Government to establish an upper limit on the M4 Relief Road project. This was when the cost was anticipated to be £1.4 billion. They said there is a tipping point and we need reassurances that we can't just write a blank cheque for this project. The cost and what it would potentially do to Welsh finances and the implications for other national projects throughout Wales was a pivotal reason for rejecting the Relief Road. The politicians that called the Welsh Government to ensure that they had a grip on finances was R.T. Davies, Conservative leader, and Sarah Atherton, Conservative member for Wrexham, in January 2018. Today, a committee responsible for the A55 expansion in North Wales also placed their project on hold, citing financial and environmental concerns. Our own councillors have stated publicly on both sides of the floor that they value the environment, and Newport wetlands forms a key part in this. Our own councillor Matthew Evans, who spoke earlier, I believe said it was one of his favourite places, and I welcome that. However, as a candidate for the May elections on the list, it was his opportunity to speak up for our wetlands, not to allow his party to politicise the M4 relief road. I was at the wetlands when they announced the decision, and what I saw were tears of joy by the staff and workers at that site. We need solutions, and I believe those solutions are about improving our public transport and rail offer. The Conservatives removed the toll from the Severn Bridge, and while popular with many, it has increased traffic by 20% in the Brynglas area of Newport. Where was their concern for Newport residents there? Here too, we could have been politically better at finding solutions for Wales and Newport. The world is changing, and we need to find a better way that eventually sees less cars and green solutions. Newport will be at the forefront of this, I am confident, and we will have a green recovery. While I'm disappointed at the original motion, I am happy to second the amendment as it supports the council to move on, and clearly this is important to all of us. I think the amendment allows us all to do that in a sensible way, working with, not against, the Welsh Government. I second this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Anybody else wants to take part in this debate, please? Thank you. Councillor Evans, you can write to reply, please. Thank you.
Well, Councillor Mudd first, Mr Mayor.
It doesn't say that here.
Well, Councillor Mudd has moved the amendment, so she speaks first, and Councillor Evans will have a right of reply.
Well, we learn everything today. Thank you. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gareth. Thank you, Leader. Would you please?
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Well, and thank you, colleagues. It's really good to listen to the debate and listen to the discussion. And this is not the first time that we've debated this issue at Newport City Council. It really isn't. But it is the first time that we've debated this issue since our circumstances have changed. I was listening to what Councillor Whitehead was saying about collective action and a collective response. And I think he makes a very important point about democracy there. And what I'm really proud of is the local government legislation that has just gone through the Senedd, because that does open up democracy. It makes Wales one of the most democratic countries, certainly the most democratic in the UK and one of the most democratic in Europe. It is a real opportunity for people, for citizens to engage with local government. It's there, that opportunity is there. And the opportunities to discuss this issue and to make representation on this issue has been there as well. Councillor Hughes highlights a really important point when it comes to this issue. And I suppose within that, my question to colleagues is, are we going to adopt a mature and responsible approach to this? Are we going to take an approach which demonstrates our maturity and our priority, which is the people of Newport? Or are we going to allow it to be politicised by candidates in the Senedd election? Well, I certainly know what my position is on that, and my position is a mature and sensible approach. We've got an opportunity here to create a city that we'll be proud of. As Councillor Hughes says, a legacy that we can hand to our children. We've set the foundations for a green and just recovery here in Newport. Newport City Council have committed to this in terms of sustainable transport. The Welsh Government have committed to this in terms of sustainable transport. UK Government, as I mentioned last time, are lamentably absent in their commitment to sustainable transport. I repeat my call to the UK Government to invest in rail infrastructure in South East Wales, and I commend this motion to you, colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mudd. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I have tried to indicate in the chat box, but my facility isn't working. I wish to speak against the motion and still reserve my right to speak for the substantive motion as it is. Is that okay?
Yes, Councillor Oakley, yes. Would you like to speak now?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Against the amendment I'm speaking, there's been quite a bit of misnomers mentioned in there. The Conservative government did take off the tariffs at the bridge. They've done so against the background of all the experts, all the scientists who were indicating, and in the end who came out strongly and recommended the M4 relief road go ahead. So everybody was listening. There's a phrase, levelling up for Wales. This was already being undertaken by the Conservative government at that time, and to encourage the relocation of businesses that have now relocated the other side of the bridge because of the effects of the M4. The administration, the Labour administration, had promised twice to deliver and to listen to the science and to listen to the expertise. But yet again, false promises were made, and people were encouraged to vote for a party that had no realistic idea of delivering what they had promised to the people of Newport, not mind the people of Wales. The Black Road will only take into account a little bit of 2%. It won't even touch the wetlands. It skirts around it by 2% of the overall plan. And what are we asking for here? We've quite often heard, let the people decide, let the people vote. Drayford and the Welsh government have not listened to the people. I don't want to politicise this, but they have, and this is the truth. They haven't listened to the people of Newport. Newport is choking every day. The vast effects.
Yeah. Councillor, you're muted. You're muted, Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. I tell you what, word of advice here. There is a mechanism being employed here to mute us. So, and this can be checked out. So I would look to Gareth Price to launch an investigation to have the chat functions scrutinised to see who is.
Excuse me, Gareth Price. Is there a point of order? Understanding order 6.13.
There are a number of points of order being raised in the chat box, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, in terms of the order of speeches, yes, after Councillor Mudd summed up, the next person to speak should have been Councillor Matthew Evans, and then the matter is put to the vote. Now, Councillor Routley said that he couldn't get through and couldn't indicate his wish to speak. So, given that you've granted him indulgence to speak after Councillor Mudd, I think it would be fair and reasonable to offer her the opportunity to respond to Councillor Routley if she so wants to. So that deals with the first point of order, because there's been the speeches have been taken out of sequence, and that would be fair and equitable. So that was the first point of order. Councillor Townsend has also raised something then in terms of a further amendment. Now we'll deal with that once we've resolved this first amendment, and we'll come back to that later, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Mudd, would you like to speak, please?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, what I was raising, Mr. Mayor, was One, there could be members of this council interfering with members' microphones. This can be done on Teams. This has been done before, and it's been done tonight. And I want an investigation onto who is.
Mr. Mayor,
Excuse me. Can we get on with the debate now?
I will demonstrate how it's done.
Please. Thank you. Councillor Mudd, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for that. Going back to summarising, summing up the debate. In my previous summation, I did say that it's time we took a mature and responsible approach. Councillor Routley,
Councillor Routley, please stop muting the microphones.
Excuse me. Let's have a proper debate, please. Could you finish, please, Councillor Mudd? And could you turn your camera off, please, Councillor Routley?
Okay.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may continue without interruption. In my previous summation, I highlighted the importance of us having a mature and responsible debate on this matter. We've discussed it many times. If we look to the future and to leave a legacy for our children, we have to rethink this. We have to look very carefully at this. We have to be fiscally responsible, and we have to invest our resources in the most prudent and responsible way. This amendment makes it very clear to colleagues that we have, as a City Council, acknowledged public opinion here in Newport around the M4 Relief Road. But we all recognise that we must act today for a better tomorrow. The time to talk about this is over. The time to take action is here. Newport City Council have committed to sustainable transport. Welsh Government have committed to sustainable transport. We work with businesses and investors all across the region. We're part of the Western Gateway, we're part of the Cardiff Capital Region. Businesses still invest within this region. We need to all work together in terms of our own corporate social responsibility to ensure that the legacy we leave for future generations is a responsible legacy. And therefore, Mr. Mayor, I commend this motion to the Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mudd. Yes. Right. Are there any more? Well, excuse me. Can you, Councillor Matthew Evans, please? You've got the right to reply. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm disappointed with Labour's attitude to this. On the one hand, they're saying they're behaving responsibly, but to me, it just sounded like a Labour Party broadcast. So very well acknowledging public opinion about the M4 Relief Road around Newport and then saying you're not going to do anything about it. I mean, it just seems crazy to me. The whole point of us calling for this would be to ensure the debates from both sides, and I understand, like Councillor Chris Evans's points, and even Councillor Jason Hughes's points. We could have the debate, and as Councillor rightly said so eloquently earlier, 8% of the wetlands will remain unaffected. This was the whole point, that your Welsh Labour government had an independent commission in the first place. Now, to say we're not going to need it in future, you've got to remember two things. Firstly, we all need jobs. We need the economy to prosper. Cars are becoming more and more environmentally friendly. And so from that point alone, we also need to remember that actually buses and coaches and taxis will use the roads. Every time the M4 Relief Road there's an accident in the Breenglass tunnels, everybody in Newport is affected. So if you're a doctor, a healthcare worker, a shop worker, everybody's lives are affected. So it's no good burying your head in the sand and saying, I'm sorry, you know, we recognise public opinion, but we're not going to do anything about it. But ultimately, this would be an opportunity for others to decide. the residents who elect us in the first place. We come outside of the political circle. And I understand Councillor Whitehead's point about more than one council, but the reality is we're the only ones who can call on this. And if others like Cardiff and Bridgend and people along the M4 corridor also called, then we'd welcome it. But I can't support this amendment. It's clearly going to be ineffective, and we are trying to have a mature and responsible debate, but we're certainly not going to be accepting this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Gareth, please. Councillor Morris put an amendment to end the debate on this motion, I think.
I didn't see that. I didn't see that, Mr. Mayor. I didn't see any motion.
I didn't do that, Mr. Mayor. I just questioned that after Jane Mudd spoke for the second time, the vote should have been put. When the mover of a motion winds up, it's normally put to the vote.
Yeah,
I've answered that question, Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me, I'm talking, please. Thank you. Point of order. After GM spoke to wind up the amendment, should we have put it to the vote? That's all I'm saying. That's what he put. I'm sorry you put it in the wrong words, but that's what he said. Thank you.
Which I've answered, Mr. Mayor, in terms of explaining that you allowed people to speak out of sequence, and that's why you allowed Councillor Mudd the right of a further response to Councillor Routley. So I think that deals with Councillor Morris's point of order.
Yeah, well, it's an important debate anyway. So I got some leeway. Thank you. Can we?
Are there any other points of order, Mr. Mayor, that we need to address before the amendment is put to the vote?
I think there's one for a point of order. Amendment. Who was that, please?
It wasn't an amendment, Mr. Mayor. I'd like a recorded vote if we could, please.
Recorded vote. Okay. There you are. Okay.
Well, I'm happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. We have recorded.
Before we get to the recorded vote, Mr. Mayor, are there any other points of order?
I just asked. I said any other points of order, please. No. No.
Right, before we have the recorded vote then, Mr. Mayor, I'm conscious of the fact that Councillor Townsend posted a question. I may not have answered that. My understanding is that the Labour amendment is instead of the original motion. This is not an addition to it. So whether that needs to be clarified before the matter is put to the vote.
That's correct, Mr. Price.
Thanks.
We're voting on two issues, the first and second. Simple.
Yeah, so Councillor Townsend posted in the chat, she wasn't clear whether this was in addition to the wording that Councillor Evans had proposed or instead of, but Councillor Mudd has now clarified that what you're voting on now, the amendment that was posted in the chat box, is instead of the original motion. So that's what we're putting to the vote now.
Okay, thank you. Can we do that, please?
Again, just to be clear, we're voting on the amendment. We're voting on the amendment first. Now, we need 5 councillors to indicate that they wish a recorded vote. I know 2 have indicated.
I indicate. I also, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mudford indicates.
Yeah, I indicate, Mr. Mayor.
I indicate,
as well, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor John Guy.
Yeah, Councillor
Yeah,
Debbie.
I think that's more than enough, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Shall we take a recorded vote?
Yes, please, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you. So when your name is called out, please can you indicate whether you wish to vote for or against the amendment that's been tabled by Councillor Mudd and seconded by Councillor Jason Hughes, or whether you wish to abstain. So going through the list then, first of all, Councillor Al Nuami. Councillor Al Nuami?
Yes, always leading the field. Yeah, 4.
Councillor Berry. Councillor Berry?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thanks.
4.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Cleverly. Councillor Cleverly. can't hear Councillor Cleverly, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Carry on.
I don't know whether Councillor Cleverly can indicate in the chat box whether she can hear me and wishes to vote.
Councillor Cleverly, can you hear? Can you indicate in the box, please? You for or against?
Moving on then, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Cochrane.
For.
Councillor Cornelius is absent. Councillor Critchley is absent. Councillor Deborah Davis.
For.
Councillor Dudley. Councillor Val Dudley. No, again, I've got no response for Councillor Dudley, Mr. Mayor, so
okay.
Whether she's lost connection, but again, if she wishes to post her vote in the chat box before we finish. Councillor Chris Evans.
I'm going for this one. For.
Sorry, was that for?
Yes.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Matthew Evans.
Against.
Councillor Charles Ferris.
Against.
Councillor Forsey.
For.
Councillor David Fowler is absent. Councillor Giles is absent. Councillor John Guy.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Ibrahim Hayat.
For.
Councillor Rahman Hayat is indicated in the chat box that he is for. Councillor Tracy Hollyoak.
Yes.
No, again, no response from Councillor Hollyoak. So again, if she'd like to post her vote in the chat box. Councillor Hourahan.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For, Mr. Price.
Okay. Councillor Jevons.
For.
Councillor Jordan.
For.
Councillor Kellaway. No response, Mr. Mayor?
No. Okay.
Councillor Lacey.
For.
Councillor Linton.
For. For.
Councillor Marshall.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mayer.
For.
For. For.
Councillor Mogford.
Against.
Councillor Morris.
Abstain.
Councillor Mudd.
For.
Councillor Rahman.
For.
Councillor Richards.
For.
Councillor Oakley.
Against.
Councillor Spencer.
For.
Mr. Mayor.
Against.
Councillor Herbie Thomas.
For.
Councillor Kate Thomas.
For.
Councillor Carmel Townsend.
Abstaining.
Councillor Holly Townsend.
Abstain.
Councillor Truman.
For.
Councillor Watkins. Councillor Joan Watkins, sorry.
Against.
Councillor Trevor Watkins. No response, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Councillor Whitcott.
For, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor White.
Against.
Councillor Whitehead.
For.
Councillor Baroness Wilcox.
4.
And Councillor David Williams.
He's voting against. His screen's gone, Mr. Price.
Right. And Councillor Hollyoak is voting
For.
Voting for. Got that?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Mayor, we've got 30 votes for, 7 against and 4 abstentions. So the amendment is duly carried. Now, that then becomes the substantive motion. Now, before you put the substantive motion to the vote, is there a further amendment?
Is there a further amendment, please?
Can I speak, please? So Holly Townsend. So I initially planned to put in an amendment on the substantive motion from the Tories, which I've just posted in the chat box. Gareth, I wonder if you could clarify. Presumably this doesn't apply now, and in which case I withdraw it and would speak in the debate.
Well, I think Councillor Townsend needs to be satisfied that what has just been passed in terms of the amendments satisfies that.
Councillor Townsend, does that satisfy that?
If she is happy that that satisfies what she was proposing, then there's no need for further amendment.
Okay.
So sorry, my question would be, I would like to still put this amendment through, but is that possible based on the fact that the substantive motion is now the Labour amendment?
Oh, yeah, sorry, right. The amendment has been carried, which means that the original motion that Councillor Evans moved has fallen.
Okay.
So the amendment now becomes the substantive motion, but before that's put to the vote, then you can move a further amendment if you so wish.
Okay, so this, even though this is based on the Tory one,
It's not.
I'll withdraw it and speak in the debate. Thanks.
The debate's gone.
Right. Okay, I'll withdraw it.
We've been withdrawn.
Okay, in that case, Mr. Mayor, the amendment which has been carried now becomes the substantive motion. So you technically you need to put this to a further vote now, but I'm assuming that you won't need a further recorded vote on that. So if members are happy, could they confirm that their original votes still stand?
Hello, members. Could you confirm your vote is still stands, please? Thank you.
Councillor Berry, yes.
Councillor Harvey, yes.
Yes.
Well, thumbs
I
up.
think we'll do it by exception, Mr. Mayor. So unless anyone demurs on that, we'll assume that they're voting the same way, in which case the amendment is duly carried.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Yes, they're all getting yeses. Yes, still abstaining. Okay, yeah. I think they're all still voting.
Well, I think we can move on to item 6
we'll
now,
move on.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, we move on. Okay, Mr. Price, thank you. Right, okay.
Mayor, I can't get the vote.
So we take your vote as your original vote, okay?
Unless anyone wishes to change their vote, Mr. Mayor, we'll assume that their intention was still the same.
Does anybody want to change their vote? No, right.
No.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. That's that. Okay. Item 6. Report on capital strategy and treasury management strategy. The leader present this report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, can I request that colleagues mute their microphones if they're not
Yes.
speaking? There's a lot of
Yes.
feedback at the
Yeah.
moment.
Excuse me. At the beginning of the meeting, I asked you all to mute your mics when you weren't speaking. Could you do so, please? And your cameras. Thank you very much. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, colleagues. I present to you our capital strategy and our Treasury management strategy. Both strategies have been presented to the Audit Committee and their comments are included within the report. Cabinet endorsed the strategies at its last meeting, and Council are required to approve the strategies, including the borrowing limits and prudential and Treasury management indicators included within. This report includes both the capital and Treasury management strategies, which at their core confirm the capital programme as part of the capital strategy, and the various borrowing limits and other indicators which govern the management of Council's borrowing and investing activities. Both of these strategies are a requirement of SIPFA's Prudential Code, which sets out the requirement for them and ensures within the frameworks with which these documents are set, that the capital expenditure plans are affordable, prudent and sustainable. So affordable, our capital spend and programmes are within sustainable limits and can be accommodated within current and future funding levels. Prudent, councils need to set borrowing limits called operational and authorised limits, which reflects the council's plan for affordable capital plans and their financing costs. On investing activities, councils need to consider the balance between security, liquidity and yield, which reflects their own risk appetite, but which prioritises security and liquidity over yield. And sustainable, council's capital plans and the revenue cost of financing the current and future forecast borrowing and debt taken out for that needs to be sustainable in terms of the council's overall finances and its impact on that. These issues are reviewed and the Head of Finance comments on them are included within the report, Mr. Mayor. Now, while Cabinet make decisions relating to what capital projects and spend to make, it is the full council that approves the borrowing limits that these are kept within. Many projects are funded from capital grants, capital receipts and specific reserves which do not impact on borrowing levels. But where borrowing is required, the programme is required to be set within these limits. This is an important area of overall financial management governance in that borrowing levels, once taken up, lock the council into a long-term liability for revenue costs in relation to the provision of the repayment of these loans and external loan interest costs. Together, these are known as our capital financing costs. I'd like to share with you some of the key aspects of our capital programme. Our capital programme goes to 2024-25, and this is our original programme, which has been extended by 2 years. It's a significant programme and includes 211.4 million of already approved projects, and alongside new investments such as the borrowing for Cardiff Capital Region spend at 17.3 million, £19.7 million for the new leisure scheme and 4.5 million for further uncommitted borrowing for future projects. This brings a total investment of £252.9 million for the programme ending 2024-25. There's a really large investment in the city's key infrastructure in this, and key projects include our new leisure scheme in the city centre, 19.7 million. And of course, as we've already mentioned previously, this will also pave the way for the new College Grant campus here in the city centre, both of which will bring much needed footfall and vibrancy to our city centre. It also involves investment in the refurbishment and restoration of our transporter bridge, the cost of that being nearly £13 million. It invests in a significant expansion, modernisation and maintenance of our school buildings, making up the majority of our £101 million investment in this programme in education in schools. over £100 million. That's a tremendous achievement. It also includes over £25 million of funding for the Cardiff Capital Region, which is enabling a huge level of economic development across our region, which of course will benefit Newport and the wider region. It also includes over £7 million of investment in our city centre and regeneration projects, and we've included further funding in our revenue budget to continue and expand on that as we build and move towards responsible recovery from the last 12 months. Now, capital fund expenditure funded by debt increases the need to undertake external borrowing. A further driver for the need to undertake external borrowing is the capacity to be internally borrowed, reducing as earmarked reserves are utilised, which in turn needs to be replaced with external borrowing. This is the case particularly for this council, which has a high level of internal borrowing, which is now reducing over the medium to long term. The council is therefore committed and has a requirement to be a net borrower for the long term. For the remaining 3 years of the current capital programme until 2024-25, the level of borrowing to facilitate the current capital programme is substantial, with external borrowing increasing from an estimated £164 million at the end of this financial year to £234 million in 2024-25, an increase of over £70 million. The total committed requirement for external borrowing is forecast to be around £284 million. And colleagues have all had an opportunity to go through these figures, and they're shown in Table 2 of the report. The commitment to increase external borrowing leads to increasing capital finance costs, as shown in Table 3 of the report, and show a significant increase in capital financing costs from 2020-21. These are included in the Council's MTFP. Costs will continue to increase into the medium to long term. Compared to comparative authorities, the percentage of the capital financing costs as a proportion to the Council's total net revenue is high. We've fully funded the capital financing costs required to complete this current capital programme, and this is a key issue in relation to demonstrating affordability. So on that point of affordability, we have fully funded our capital programme. As the Council's net budget is increasing significantly too, the proportion of the Council's net budget allocated to this remains broadly the same as now. Sorry, lost my place there a moment. And the issue of potentially lower or low growth in funding is not a new risk and exists today. Therefore, from a sustainability viewpoint, the relatively high cost of this budget is a challenge and is a risk, but no higher or new than it is today. Council is requested to approve the capital strategy and the borrowing limits within. If I may, Mr Mayor, just move on to our Treasury strategy. This deals with plans for the Council's borrowing and investing activities. On borrowing, the capacity to be internally borrowed will be reduced in the medium to long term. In 2021-22, the Council is expected to undertake external borrowing, both for the refinancing of maturing loans and to fund increased capital spend in the existing capital programme. It will remain as much internally borrowed as is possible and increase actual external borrowing only when needed to manage its cash requirements. However, Mr Mayor, the Council may, where it feels it necessary to mitigate the risk of interest rate rises, undertake borrowing early to secure interest rates within agreed revenue budgets. And this, of course, Mr Mayor, will be done in line with advice from our Treasury advisors. On investing, the authority's objective when investing money is to strike an appropriate balance between risk and return, minimising the risk of incurring losses from defaults and the risk of receiving unsuitably low investment income. Given the increasing risk and very low returns from short-term unsecured bank investments, the authority aimed to diversify into higher yielding asset classes during 2021-22. However, this was delayed due to the current economic climate as a result of the pandemic. This is especially the case for the estimated £10 million that's available for longer term investment. All of the authority's surplus cash is currently invested in short-term unsecured bank deposits and local authorities. The strategy to diversify into higher yield asset classes will be implemented in the coming year. Again, the Council is requested to approve the Treasury Management Strategy, including the investment strategy, Treasury Management indicators and limits, and the minimum revenue provision policy included within the strategy. So, Mr. Mayor, to conclude, I present to you colleagues our capital strategy and Treasury Management strategy for agreement by full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mudd. Is there a seconder, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll second that.
Thank you. Are there any comments on the proposal? Councillor Anuami Mikdad, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just start by welcoming the capital programme for the next 7 years, or the 7-year capital programme, which ends in 2025. Yes, it's really very ambitious. It's really very pleasing to see, you know, the amount of investment the council is proposing to make in Newport. So that's really a big positive. I've got a question, and I'm not sure the page number exactly. My sort of tablet just switched off. Around about the page 57, 58, it's the table, which is the 7-year capital programme. And the item I like to pick on that one is the city deal one. So it's showing a 3-year commitment, starting from the year after next, 1.8 million, followed by 10 million in 23-24 and 5.5 million in 24-25, a total of 17.3 million, as the leader said. And then the note leading to it before, which I just want some clarification on. Now, the note seemed to say this includes 17.3 million for the cost of carry of undertaken borrowing for Cardiff Capital Region City Deal schemes prior to the funding from Her Majesty Treasury being received and Regeneration projects. And really my question is, so we are borrowing this money pending it being refunded by central government. Can I ask what sort of lead time between us borrowing the money and between us getting it back? So that's question one. Do you want that first, and then maybe I can ask you the second question?
It's not a question and answer session, Mr. Mayor, it's a debate.
Ask two questions.
It's a debate. Excuse me, it's a debate, not a question. But
sorry,
it's a debate, not a question and answer. Sorry.
I cannot ask a question.
You can ask a question, yes.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's a debate on what was being said. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought I asked the first question. Do you want me to repeat that?
No, you've already asked that question.
Just to be clear, Mr. Mayor, it's not a question and answer session.
That's what I said.
Army can ask questions. The leader will then respond at the end of the debate.
Well, that's what I just said. It's not an answering question, if you listen to me.
Yeah,
so
okay.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah, I asked a question which is seeking clarification on the lead time. And the second point is, out of the projects for which that kind of money is going to be raised and then rebated, what proportion of that money would go for projects in the Newport Council area, please? Thank you.
Councillor, could you, it's not an answering question and answers. Could you reply that in writing to him, please? Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. That's no problem.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Ray Truman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, this capital programme before us is very forward-thinking, and for me, it deals with all the main issues. For example, in recent evidence, proven evidence has said that in Newport, the population in Newport will rise by 2043. It'll grow by 5%, which is the highest growth. It's going to be the highest growth in Wales. Households will increase by about 6.9% over the same period, and a further 4,000 homes will be needed in the next 4 years. So for me, this strategy does deal with all these main issues. For example, people are going to need extra leisure facilities, and the introduction of the proposed introduction of the leisure centre will address that. As far as I'm concerned, it'll put 2,000 students and 2,000 staff into the city centre on a daily basis. So where will they be spending their money? In the cafes and shops in the city centre. So that's a marvellous boost to the city centre economy. So I welcome that. I also welcome the 7 million investment in the city centre for regeneration projects. That is very welcome and all at this particular time. But also, again, continuing with a leisure theme, the recent money has been made available for the refurbishment of the transporter bridge. That's really got to be welcomed again. And there's also money, as the leader suggested, in the city centre regeneration products, is 7 million. That makes complete sense to me, especially coming out of COVID. Social care have had additional funding, but for me, and also one of the key ones, and this is for all councillors across Newport and other cities in town, but for Newport, the empty property fund is got to be really welcome, that is, because over the years, a lot of us have lived near and we've had complaints of unsightly buildings, nothing being done about them. They've been left abandoned almost. The owners are interested in me doing something for them. This funding will recognise it, and it's evergreen funding, as a report suggests. So that has got to be welcomed. As I said, that's very, very important as far as I'm concerned. The other one is, and again, the leader mentioned this, was investing in the workforce, apprenticeships, those sort of providing jobs. And the final one for me, and there are still loads of others, Mr. Mayor, is the COVID recovery fund. That's £500,000. That's to support community groups in their community and also focusing on the well-being. So all in all, that capital programme for me is addressing all the issues. It's been a lot of work to put it together, that's for sure. And as I say, we're coming out of COVID soon, hopefully, and things will get back to some normality. And these are the issues that we will need. It's investing in the economy, it's investing in the city centre, and it's investing in leisure. I think they will be the two key issues that will need addressing come when COVID goes. And that, as I say, it's got to be welcomed. And a big thank you to all the officers as well who have been involved in this, and indeed all the residents, because they have been consulted on a lot of these things, particularly the new proposed leisure centre. The council tax they've also been consulted on, that's been consulted widely. So all in all, as far as I'm concerned, this is a very proactive capital programme. I support.
Thank you, Councillor Ray Truman. Councillor Philip Houdahane, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Taking on board everything that Councillor Truman has just said, the industrial redevelopment of South Wales is absolutely essential to the future prosperity of our young people. Newport's always been an incredibly forward-looking authority. We had things like our own electricity generation station, we had sewerage before most cities, we had gas plants before most cities, and we now need to have high-tech investment and doing it on a regional basis with the other 9 authorities that have contributed to this. We've already had a fantastic return in the IQE investment, and I'm sure that under the leadership and the steerage of the leaders of all the authorities in South Wales, we can actually regenerate South Wales again to produce high quality, high paid jobs for our young people, and this will safeguard our future and their future. And I totally welcome the budget and the capital investment programme that the leaders outlined this evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hooran. Are there any more who want to speak in the debate? Thank you. Would all councillors please cast their vote now by clicking on the appropriate box in the chat function. I will give all members a short time to cast their vote before confirming the result. Thank you. Well, the vote is as goes. 27 for, 1 against. So therefore the report is duly approved. Thank you. Item 7, review budget and medium-term financial plan, final proposals. Leader, would you present this report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you. May I say thank you for the excellent way that you're managing this meeting this evening. Thank you. It's very, very helpful to those of us who have to speak, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Item 7 then on our agenda, the budget and the medium-term financial plan report. These are our final proposals. So following recommendation by my cabinet, the council needs to review and make a decision on the level of council tax and the resulting total net revenue budget for 2021-22. The cabinet met on the 22nd of February 2021 and finalised detailed budget recommendations. The report here sets out the recommended overall 2021-22 budget, resulting service cash limits, council tax increase and the council's general reserve and contingencies. An increase in council tax of 3.7%. So this for a Band B property, Mr Mayor, that would take it to £1,242.20 a year. And this is recommended. A 3.7 increase on council tax is an increase of 66 pence a week, 76 pence a week and 85 pence per week for Band B, C and D properties respectively. So turning first, if I may, to our budget. While we're not here to agree the detail of the budget, as Cabinet are responsible and where and what resources are spent, it is important to mention a few items here. So the budget represents the culmination of about 6 months of hard work, from agreeing the budget assumptions to form the basis of our planning to finalising the detailed proposals last week, after a period of consultation on our draft budget, which we announced in early January. We've done this under difficult conditions, working remotely and with the significant uncertainty of developing budgets in the current challenging times. Many of you here today have actually taken part in that, from my cabinet members to those who sit on scrutiny committees, the Fairness Commission, and for many of us here who are school governors and deal with budgets there, I'd like to thank everyone who's played a part in this, and particularly our council officers who've worked tirelessly on this, while also dealing with supporting our city and residents through the last 12 months. And I think, Mr Mayor, it's really important to emphasise that all of this work has been going on in addition to our COVID response. So thank you indeed to all of the officers who've been working on this. Now, the council's funding is increasing significantly next year, and this has provided some choices and the opportunity to invest in key services, including preparing the city, the council and the city for the challenges of recovering from the last 12 months, whilst funding the revenue support grant accounts for about I'll start again. I was distracted then when Anne popped up on the screen. Sorry.
Get off.
Start again, Mr Mayor, if I may. So whilst the revenue support grant accounts for about 76% of our overall funding, council tax is still an important element. Funding with the 3.7% council tax increase will increase by just over £15 million. Now, we are making savings still because our investments are more than this, and therefore savings are needed. Our draft budget proposals on savings showed that we're on the right track. Most of the savings we're making will have little to no impact on services, and they are delegated to the heads of service to implement. And of those proposals that we consulted with the public on, Mr. Mayor, only 2 proposals received negative feedback from residents. I've said that I would listen, and I have. We've dealt with these by deleting the one proposed saving that wasn't liked by the public. That was the proposal to charge at the Household Waste Recycling Centre. And we've reduced the council tax increase substantially from that which we consulted on. So you will recall we consulted on a proposed 5% increase, and we've reduced that to 3.7%. The budget investment prioritises people in our city, and it invests in place. 4.9 million into our schools will fund the cost increases in our schools, including new and expanding schools. We've kept back the pay increase element, and we'll distribute this when we know what that is, up to the level that we've made provision for. Our intention is to at least pay for the cost increases in our overall schools budget. We're investing £2.5 million in our social care services in a number of areas. Emergency placements for vulnerable children, helping our adults with learning difficulties live independent lives, and provision for increased costs from our care providers due to COVID and Brexit issues, and ensure that they are there to provide the best care that's possible for our citizens here in Newport. We're investing £4 million in our city services and regeneration, investment and housing services. This covers a range of issues, but will provide capacity to deal with empty homes, economic development, and projects to further regenerate and support the city centre. These are crucial now as we look beyond the challenges of the last 12 months. We're making provision of £2.1 million for the funding of the Council's capital programme, as we've previously discussed. This is providing us with the capacity to implement a very significant capital programme that will benefit our schools, key cultural infrastructure, a new leisure centre in the city that will also unlock the college campus and key city centre regeneration projects. Nearly £1 million of our funding will provide capacity to coordinate and implement capacity in our functions, which will take forward our aspirations on sustainable development, highways and decarbonisation initiatives. It will also help us to develop our workforce planning and capacity, find ways to fund initiatives and to support that further increase in pride in our city and support our local communities. It's a responsible budget, Mr. Mayor, which focuses on recovery as well as key services that support our vulnerable residents and young people. We all understand the challenges, Mr. Mayor, that our communities have faced over the past year. Everyone's made sacrifices to get us to where we are today, and we've all come to appreciate the value of our well-being. We will invest £500,000, so £500,000, in a COVID community recovery fund to support our community groups to play their part in a responsible recovery, which focuses on well-being. We'll use this also to invest in special projects which will help with our sustainable development objectives. This will include cleaning up eyesores, which current budgets cannot fund, and improving our green spaces, as these are more important than ever. We will invest in tackling fly tipping, working with residents, community groups, businesses and key partners such as Natural Resources Wales and Welsh Government to do this. Now, throughout the pandemic, Mr. Mayor, we've administered over £4.5 million of grant funding to businesses and millions more in business rate relief payments. As part of our responsible recovery budget, we'll also increase our support for businesses, investing £250,000 in our business development grant scheme. This budget, Mr. Mayor, prioritises people and invests in place. It sets out the foundations for a green and just recovery, a responsible recovery for us all. Now, in terms of council tax, Mr. Mayor, and that is our review and decision here today, as I announced last week, we've recommended a reduced 3.7% increase. And I would make the following points in relation to this. It is significantly reduced on the 5% that we consulted on, and also below the base assumption in the council's medium-term financial plan. Newport's tax level is one of the lowest in Wales and the UK for comparable councils, and the increase here maintains that. The rate here is not out of kilter to other increases across Wales. In fact, we are pretty much in the middle of what is happening across Wales. And it is going to be substantially below increases in England. Our relatively low level of council tax is not without its challenges, Mr. Mayor, especially in a growing city with relative high deprivation levels. We cannot allow this to slip back even further, as that is just not sustainable and not responsible. The level here provides for a balanced position. So, Mr. Mayor, colleagues, this is a good budget which has a focus on responsible recovery as we look forward and puts the council at the heart of supporting our city as we move ahead from the challenges of the last 12 months. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I commend this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Mudd. Thank you. Is there a seconder, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to speak to it, please.
Certainly. Are there any comments on the proposal, please?
Could I speak to that now, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, you can, Councillor Jevons.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, can I first put on record my thanks to everybody that's been involved in this budget process. It is a long and grueling process, but which we deliver. But this is a budget formulated on responses received. So, along with the removal of the car parking charges for certain sites within the city, which were removed by the Cabinet earlier in the budget cycle, removal of the saving proposal STR 212202, charges for non-domestic waste accounted to 20k, is welcoming. The saving of non-domestic waste for users at the HWRC site, again, which has received over 60,000 visits since the booking system was introduced, is showing again that we have listened to budget responses. This, along with the increase in waste enforcement within this budget, will help us in the illegal action of fly tipping, which is a blur on society, and this will help with further expenditure. As I mentioned in the last Cabinet meeting, we urge all litter picking groups to adhere to safe working practices in conjunction with the Council's booking policy, and ask the public to check when having items removed from their property that the people removing the waste have the correct paperwork licensing in place, again making some savings within NCC and fly tipping issues. I'm also very pleased to see an increase in the winter maintenance budget, helping amongst others safe levels on our highways to a premium. Each grit run we perform costs and are very rarely seen by the public when we're indoors in this inclement weather. So I recommend this budget to you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jevons. Are there any more who wish to debate this budget, please? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, but there's a number of us have indicated we'd like to speak on it.
There's a list on the side, Mr. Mayor.
I know it's not there. I can't see it. Otherwise,
Matthew Evans, Ray Truman, Councillor Davis, Harvey, Whitehead, and then Rahman.
But would you all? It's not here. But should we hang on? If we'd all like to speak in turn, then let your turns, please, if you would. Thank you, because I can't see here.
Councillor Matthew Evans first, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor Matthew Evans, please. Thank you, Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In 2009-10, a Band D house was paying £743. This year, it'll be £1,242. That's a massive increase of £500. And if you're in the top band, it's over £1,000. We've been saying for years you need to generate more income, make publications like Newport Matters cost neutral, and survive quite comfortably with one less cabinet member, all of which have been ignored. Just those two items alone would have added up to about £500,000 by now. This year has seen a massive rise in funding given to your Welsh Labour government in Cardiff Bay. To fight COVID-19, The UK government has supported Wales by protecting nearly 400,000 jobs, supported more than 100,000 self-employed people, and over 50,000 businesses with UK government-backed loans. And an extra, well, I've got 5.2 billion here, but I think it's gone up again today. So I think it's almost £6 billion for the Welsh budget. We've also had the largest increase in Wales settlement, again at 5.6%. I will also keep reminding you about your call in opposition not to have any increase in council tax at all because of the hardship it would cause. Yet you are setting council tax significantly above the rate of inflation. Next year, do you think you'll do the same? I doubt it. And don't forget what the leader, yes, the leader of the Labour Party, your party said, drop the absurd council tax increases. Clearly, it's not all doom and gloom, and we welcome some of the proposals, and of course, the quickest U-turn in history over the introduction of car parking charges at certain locations across the city. Clearing up fly tipping and tougher action, for instance, is of course something to applaud, but you have to ask, why has it been allowed to spiral out of control long before COVID? You talk a lot about listening, but I'm sure your inbox, members' inboxes, was full of complaints like mine are. Been waiting 6 months for a pothole to be repaired. Can't get through on the phone. No response to emails. Information station closed. Need I go on? And yes, perhaps that's understandable during a COVID crisis. But what isn't is you are asking people to pay more for less. The Conservative group cannot possibly support these proposals. And I'm not sure Newport residents will be able to stomach them either. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ray Truman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the budget naturally, and what we've got to look back and see the year we've all gone through, all of us, that's each and every one of us. Hope we never see that again. Probably the most difficult budget, without a doubt, that any of us will ever have to deal with, but we dealt with it. From day one, Mr. Mayor, we've kept Newport open. Despite COVID raging in the first lockdown, our officers and employees were out there all collecting the bins, collecting the recycling. We had to set up a TTP, track and trace project from day one, almost like a scratch, but we did that. Alongside all that, we had to look at all our budgets. And as I say, that's how difficult it's been the last year. But as I say, in this budget, I think it's a budget for investment. It's certainly in the city centre, and the boost that will give, and also in the leisure facilities, as I said earlier on. But as I say, this is a budget that's been very difficult to get to. It's a lot of time spent on it by officers and members of the authority, but it gives us progression at a very difficult time, because when we come out of COVID, and we will come out of COVID, and it's great to see the vaccination programme go so well. But as I say, people will be looking to get back out again, you know, go to places, leisure facilities be so important, but this budget for me addresses it all. It really does. Against the background of such a difficult 12 months as we have all had. Yes, we would all like to have seen the council tax a lot less than it is, but we really have had to look at all of it. What challenges are going to be facing us when we come out of COVID? And we're addressing those challenges with this budget, Mr. Mayor. So I certainly support it, Mr. Mayor, but as I say, when you consider the 12 months we've all gone through, this is addressing an issue when we come out of COVID. These issues will be needed. The city centre investment, all these things, leisure facilities, they'll all be needed. So as I say, it's a real good budget for the situation and where we come from, and I move it. I support it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Truman. Councillor Debbie Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Debbie, you there? Mr. Price? Hello?
Yeah, I suggest you move to the next name on the list, which is Councillor Harvey, Mr.
Councillor Debbie Harvey, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I obviously support this budget that's been brought forward today. Again, same old from the opposition. They have not brought an alternative budget, and they haven't brought an alternative budget, Mr. Mayor, since I became elected in 2012. I've yet to hear one from them. All they ever do is moan about the council tax, moan, but they don't actually put anything in place to counterbalance what they're moaning about. We have given £101 million to schools, £4.5 million in grant funding to businesses, £500,000 on special projects. We have gone above and beyond. I'm sorry, I need to rephrase that. Our officers have gone above and beyond. We work on these budget scores over a 12-month. We don't do it on the back of a cigarette packet. We do it over a year, and our officers are doing everything in their possible power to address what we need to address. We've lowered the council tax. We have put 150,000 in an empty property fund, a 1.8 million provision for initiatives for regeneration projects, and the list is endless, as the leader has already written and spoke about. So I'm sorry whether it pleases or offends anyone. I fully support this budget going forward, and it would be nice now and again if we had something from the opposition by way of a counterbalance. But again, nothing. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I think Councillor Debbie Davis is back in with us, please. Debbie? No. Okay. Councillor Kevin Whitehead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope we don't crash. Not a massive diatribe from myself. Couple of thoughts. I could have tabled an amendment. I did write in to the financial people with a 2.5% suggestion. But you know, being sensible, educated guess tells me that that would have been voted down tonight, and I really don't want to waste people's time. I'm also fully aware, as I always am, that it's easy to throw rotten tomatoes at people that have to make difficult decisions. And what pains me is the leader is right. There's lots of good things to see in this budget, lots of aspirations in there. I like the fact with the education, the city centre, the social care. So, you know, let's not kid ourselves that it's not a good budget, because I think efforts have been made, and it mostly is a good budget. For me, the thing that always is a bugbear and the biggest hot potato when I speak to our residents, it is unfortunately a hike in council tax, as is 3.7%. Like I said, I suggested 2.5 early doors. It's not going to happen, and it will probably be voted through. But I feel I need to represent my electorate at all times and their views. And when I go out and about and I speak to people about we're going to have a 3.7, they say, listen, Kev, look at the streets, look at this, look at that. The impact on services during the pandemic, expected, but not as big as they have been. And we're kind of getting sick of people urinating on us and telling us it's raining, to coin a classic British phrase. So for me, it's, again, I don't enjoy sitting here being a naysayer, anti-budget this, anti-budget that, because, like I say, there are some fantastic things contained within this budget. The only bugbear for me when I put my hand in the air is I have to vote on behalf of my residents, and unfortunately, they do not want the 3.7% council tax increase. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Majid Rahman, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to raise a few points there. First of all, based on what Councillor Whitehead just said, I mean, actions speak louder than words, and it's unfortunate that there's no counter proposal from the Conservatives or any amendments or any suggestions, which is disappointing, not just for the residents that voted for them, but also disappointing for the rest of us to hear nothing of substance from them.
I did write in, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, Councillor Kevin Townsend did write in. So can we get on with what you're saying, please, Majid? Please, thank you.
Yeah, sure. I understand. Just want to, as I say, just continue where I left off. To put this budget in perspective, Mr. Mayor, since the Conservative government started their disastrous austerity programme of cuts, Newport has seen cuts of £78.1 million. £78 million cut from the residents of this city because of the Conservative government. With this council tax of between 66p and 85p per week extra, this Labour administration, as the leader quite eloquently put, will invest 1.8 million in the city centre, invest £500,000 in the COVID recovery fund for our communities, make available £250,000 for small business grants. That's benefiting our small business, not just in the city centre, but across the city. An increase of nearly £5 million for our schools. That's around £15 million in the last 3 years. 3 years alone. Also committing to a green recovery by tackling fly tipping, empty properties, green infrastructure and decarbonisation. And on top of all that, Mr. Mayor, all this is being achieved with the Labour administration looking to deliver a brand new leisure centre in the city centre fit for the 21st century. Now, I come from poverty. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I grew up in poverty. I lived in Maindy all my life, and it's, you know, tragic to say that I've seen my parents struggle. And I just want to directly address the people of this city that are struggling at the moment. There is help available for you from this council. If you struggle with any council tax rises, there is help available for you. And I would encourage any residents that will struggle to contact the council. But we've listened to the residents by lowering the council tax rise. It had to be done, unfortunately, if we were to deliver the investment to this city and to look forward for our future generations. And also, we've delivered a balanced budget. So not to vote for this balanced budget and to vote for a budget that's been taken into consideration by councillors' residents as well, will hamper not only the recovery of our city, but also pose a threat for future generations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rahman. Can we try Councillor Debbie Davis again, please? She's there.
I hope so, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Debbie Davis.
Thank you. My apologies. Again, it's my son on his PlayStation. I've had a few words. I wanted to speak. Back in January in full council, we all voted unanimously to support the council tax reduction scheme. And the council tax reduction scheme is a vital scheme for our residents in Newport who find our council tax base, the money that they have to pay on a monthly basis, impossible to meet. The council tax scheme reduction scheme is managed by our housing benefit scheme, benefit workers, and they work incredibly hard to ensure that those residents who should be in receipt of that benefit are fully supported. And indeed, last year I can absolutely tell you that £11,976,000 was actually invested in our residents to ensure that they were supported where they could not afford to pay that scheme. And again, there's projected expenditure of £12,263,000. So there's money there for our residents to support them if they cannot afford to pay the council tax. And in addition, Welsh Government afforded us an extra £300,000 to support our residents during the COVID crisis. And I'm absolutely certain Welsh Government will continue to support residents and us as a local authority to ensure that we support our residents where they can't afford to pay their council tax. So the council tax is not an issue for those many residents who actually are in poverty. There is support there for them. So therefore, I support this budget. I do commend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor William Routley, please. Thank you.
I think I indicated as well, Chair.
Yes. Who's speaking then, please? Sorry.
Shall I go ahead, Mr. Mayor?
Chris Evans. Only Bill because
to speak.
Bill, only in the
let-
chat,
can-
you
well, hang on,
indicated after me, mate.
Hang on, Chris. Can you speak after Will, please? Thank you. Councillor Rowley, please speak, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I watched the budget discussions at Cabinet, and it was like going to a Christmas party. They're so the congratulations they were offering each other was actually quite unbelievable. I couldn't believe what I was seeing and witnessing. You know, the Conservative opposition party, we have supported this administration right throughout this pandemic. And now, at the time, at this very time, this increase of 3.7% is not supporting those who are really in need. For example, the Bridge Achievement Centre, aside from inflationary increases on the revenue budgets, there is no additional revenue. Now, the Bridge Achievement Centre supports children in crisis, children with complex needs, and students with complex needs and families that send their children there. And yet it finds itself in special measures. So we have special situations, children with dire special needs being operated by an education facility in special measures, and no money to make the improvements, nothing invested in these very vulnerable people. The council tax increase is dramatically affecting those at the lower end of life. The economic position and the uncertainty of the last 12 months have delayed families from paying their council tax, not because they didn't want to pay it, but because they couldn't pay it. The Conservative budget has been announced, and yet again they're going to continue the furlough scheme to support people throughout Wales and throughout the United Kingdom. They've also extended and going to continue with the £20 extra for a universal credit, and that's to everybody in the United Kingdom. The Welsh Government, if they decide not to disperse a great amount of money to the councils, that's their choice. This government has supported the country as a whole in the worst of times and have led the way, and indeed has secured everybody in Newport their vaccinations through the distribution here. So I say, Mr. Mayor, that I cannot.
Excuse me, you've been muted, Bill. Bill, you've been muted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is shenanigans going on. I've reported this to Mr. Gareth Price already in an email during the course of this meeting, and Gareth and his team are looking into it. Those people trying to mute me, you will be investigated and you will be dealt with, I can assure you.
Okay, Bill, can you get on with the debate, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I'm allowed to do so without
Yes.
the interference from members.
Thank you.
They have created a divided society here in Newport. Yes, on one hand, it's great to have the leisure centres and the great places to go, but only if you can afford to go. And I'm suggesting there's a big proportion of citizens that not only can afford to go, but can't afford to survive if this pandemic goes on any longer. And all we're doing is increasing their debt on this with this council tax rise. I can't support it. There are good elements in it, I would agree. But what I would like to have seen was
Point of order,
the
Mr.
centre,
Hang on, point of order, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Rotely used a word that should not be used in any discussion or debate in this council, and I'd ask him to redraw what he just said to the rest of the council and withdraw it.
What word was that?
Do you know what it said? Death.
No, you tell me. I don't know what it. No, you tell me.
Mr. Mayor, we don't use that language in this council chamber.
What language, Mr. Mayor?
Hang on.
That's against standing orders.
Excuse me. What did you say, Bill? Please, if you
from the beginning.
No, just no.
Can he refer to? I don't know, Mr. Mayor.
So we may ask him what word did he use, please? Was it?
He used the word death, as pointing out our responsibilities for someone to die through our policy.
No, debt.
Debt. He said debt. Sorry, Ray, debt.
It's in there, debt.
Debt.
Can I say I apologise then?
Okay, well, yes, okay, thank you.
So it's increasing their debt. So what I would like to see, Mr. Mayor, I would like to have seen more low-cost leisure activities open, such as the splash pool, which we've had the money done at Tregear Park, and maybe even one in Beechwood Park somewhere. So this is low-cost family entertainment that they can go to in the summer. These families need help, and they need help now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Rotely. Councillor Chris Evans, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, wow. Yeah. Okay, so let's take some of the hot air out of things. I think it's important that people watching this, if they do watch it, understand that budgets go through scrutiny. And we often have an opportunity at scrutiny to try and come up with things whereby things can be done slightly better. Now, at least Kevin and I and Janet and Jason suggested 2.5. Our scrutiny, high-end scrutiny, suggested 3.5. It's actually come out to 3.7. So, we also suggested in our scrutiny investing in Pride in Newport, as it used to be called, and we've got investment in a cleaner city, so that's good stuff. Again, it's all very well and good doing little films, but like Kirk 100 and the Rogie Massive, the writing's on the wall, we're going to be cleaning up, yeah. It's important to look then sort of around us in South East Wales and, looking towards Monmouthshire when we're considering voting for, against or abstaining. Monmouthshire at the moment are proposing 4.95 and 3.6 million in cuts. So when you look at that in the round, what's going on elsewhere, it's kind of important. But I like most members have said, we're worried, and I'm worried about people that can't afford the potential council tax rise, and I thank Majid for what he said on that. But there's also a new group of people, people that are not on great wages but are on furlough and are getting 80% of their wages. So rather than perhaps posturing, I reached out to the finance team and Marion and sought assurance. Emma Johnson did a great job, got back to me within a reasonable time scale, and has said that if anybody's having difficulty because they're on furlough, they should contact the council tax team and discuss their arrangements, and they would do all they can to have temporary lowering of payments and a payment plan, on the understanding that when they go back to work, they can then revert to their normal payments. So that's like really, I think, important, rather than the bluster and the posing, that if people in Newport are on furlough and they're finding things difficult, you know, not obviously top end 100,000 wages, but if they're just getting by and living off 80% of their wages, they can reach out, and the council tax department will listen to them and try to work things out with them. And I thank Emma for coming forward with that assurance. You know, there were some good things in this budget, and you know, I've said in the past I've been critical that councils should work together and even join up. We can't on the one hand say that we don't want councils to join up and then not accept the deficits. But the reality is that, you know, UK-wide 15 billion has been taken out of council tax, of council budgets. 15 billion in the last 10 years. That, you know, that's a huge figure. This is actually, I've called budgets unimaginative in the past, and, like, to use my terminology, boring, you know, but this is actually like a pretty good budget. 1.8 million into the city centre. You know, you all see me with my shop local bags. You know, this is something that would really perhaps will help our small businesses, more apprenticeships, a green sustainable development. It's good stuff. Nearly $500,000 for volunteer groups, and 2.5 million for the vulnerable, 5 million for schools. So it's a pretty good budget, and it could possibly lay the foundation for a Cas Newid comeback post-COVID. And, you know, yeah, I've been critical in the past, but this is pretty good. Thank you.
Hello, Councillor Carmel Townsend, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, thank you.
I think there are some good elements in this budget, but in my view it doesn't go far enough in investing in street cleaning and tackling fly tipping, which is an ever-growing problem. The proposed measures are a bit too modest and won't make much difference overall. In addition, I feel that the planning process needs strengthening in terms of enforcement and through the appeals process. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Paul Cochrane, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a couple of points. Obviously, a lot has been said here this evening, so I didn't want to repeat it because it is getting on a bit now. But I was amazed, though, Matthew and Bill Routley were praising the UK government overall what they've done over this pandemic. When you think about it, a lot of the problems lie at their feet, to be perfectly honest. If we go back to March, when we should have had a proper lockdown, we might not be in the place that we are at the moment, with they're taking feedback from South Korea, Taiwan, New Zealand. They all knew what was coming, and we didn't take
order, Mr. Mayor. This is not germane to the budget.
Well, you mentioned it, Bill, before.
Excuse me, the two of you. No, stop this, please.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Hang on, I'll speak about it. Would you speak on what's happening at the moment, not on the past, please? Thank you, Councillor Cochrane.
Well, okay, I take what you're saying, but other people raise things about how good the government was. I've been here, like Ray Truman, over 35 years plus, maybe too long for a lot of people, maybe, but I can say this is one of the best budgets we've ever come across. And I think because we've done so much, and I think in fairness to Chris Evans, I think he summed it up quite well. This is a pretty good budget. There's a lot going on in the budget. There's a lot of things that I think that a lot of us been talking about for a long time. When we talk about having this new leisure centre, my God, that's going to really open up the regeneration of the city centre. We know what's happening, all shopping centres at the moment, and I think we're going to be rejuvenating our town centre, which we all completely need. The issue I wanted to make about the splash pool. I can remember that splash pool being emptied nearly every morning because of people throwing bottles in there. They were urinating in it. It was a complete mess. You know, if you covered it over, it wouldn't be an open sort of splash pool. I really don't want to go to that. It was horrendous what was happening there. going back to what Carmel was saying about fly tipping, I totally agree about the fly tipping, but you think about what happened with Pride in Newport when myself and Ray Truman, when we originated starting that, it was a wonderful system, east and west, when we had vans going round picking up all the fly tipping, and it was really working well. It was picked up within a day or two. And that's the type of thing we're doing. I agree. There's got to be enforcement there. We've got to start putting some heavier fines on people. No question about that. So really, all I want, that's all I want to say. It's a wonderful budget. Let's accept it, and let's be clear. In other years, we've had a lot of redundancies. I'm pretty sure in saying this, I don't think there's any compulsory redundancies through in this budget. In fact, there's a lot of regeneration. We're bringing some of the, certainly in social services, I know we're creating more jobs there in certain areas. And one point that I want to just quickly raise before I finish is that the issue we've been having with taxis driving children back and forth to schools, we're going to be using some of the transport from the Bringlass Day Centre now. We're using the buses now to ferry our most vulnerable children to Maisebu. That is something we've brought back in, and I think it's going to be a wonderful, and I think they're all going to be pleased about that system. We had a wonderful letter from the head teacher on that. So all I can say is I think it's a wonderful budget. It's not a lot, is it, on when you think 3.7? It's not, and going back to Kevin, I think it's about another 20p difference. And I think everybody have said it before, there is help for those that can't afford it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cochrane. Councillor Phil Hourihan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry it's a little bit of a disjointed discussion this evening, but that's the nature of the team's method. Can I go back to the point that the leader of the independent group made? He wrote in to say he wanted a 2.5% increase on the council tax. Did he also send us the justification for this? Did he tell us what things he was prepared to cut to get the council precept down to 2.5%?
Well, I don't, Councillor Hourihan, that's not part of the debate. We're debating what's on show at the moment, not what he said. Thank you. Thank you. Could you like it in writing?
Right.
Would you like it in writing?
Please, Mr. Mayor, if you...
I'm prepared to answer that, Mr. Mayor.
No, please, Mr. Mayor, if you'll bear with me.
I'm prepared to answer your question.
This applies to all of the opposition parties. They've all blown hot air and they've both blown derision at the budget that's been proposed today. They haven't been prepared to do any work other than to say they don't like it. Now, every year we have a budget consultation process. It'll start now in a month or two and it'll end up in another year. Now, if somebody or some party wants to say they don't like the budget, that's fine. That's this overused word in Newport, democracy. However, they must propose an alternative budget, not just to say they don't like it, or I want 2.5%, or I want 10.5%, or I want to find the pot of gold that always lies just beyond Monmouthshire. And I make the point that let's have it next year. If you want to oppose the Labour budget, please let us hear what you want to do as an alternative, not just blow off lots of hot air. And 2.5%, I would dearly love to hear from the leader of the Independent Party where he's going to get the 1.25% that he's just cut out of the budget. Is he going to get it from social services? Is he going to get it from the leisure centre? Is he going to get it from the transporter bridge? If you can just tell us, please, where he's going to find 1.25% to cut out the budget.
Okay, yeah, Councillor Hourihan.
Can I come back in, Mr. Mayor, to answer that?
I'm talking, sorry, Sorry, Kevin, please. Hold on a moment.
Okay.
You've already talked on this debate. You can't talk again. But
No, but it's supplementary, Mr. Mayor, to that question. I've got answer to that question, Mr. Mayor.
Gareth, can you cover with a supplementary?
It's not a supplementary, mate, but he can come in back on a point of personal information or clarification.
Okay, yes, if you would, please. Thank you,
Mr. Councillor Hurricane. I have had plenty of say on scrutiny, and I have also made many suggestions in the past where savings could be made. And you should have been listening when I actually said that we should cross-pollinate with other authorities, job share, chief executives. I have given it to you all in the past. This is where savings could be made. We are paying chief executive and officers up the Civic Centre Coronation Street wages, to coin a phrase. That's a lot of money, and they've had their full salaries during a pandemic when others haven't. So my point is, the savings could have been made there. We only have to cross-pollinate with other authorities, as I've suggested in the past. There's plenty of monies to be saved, and also you've got carrying one cabinet member too many. That's my answer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll always have an answer for you, Phil O'Rien.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I do wish that you could stop people personalising it. I didn't mention who it was. I talked about the leader of the Independents, but he seems obsessed with personalising things.
Don't even know you, mate.
Can we stop all this? Could we just stick to the debate, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. I just thought that you underline that I have given answers before that where savings could be made. It's been done in the past, it could be done in the future.
Okay,
Overall,
Kevin,
it's a very good budget. Thank
Kevin,
you.
can I just say no, thank you. Mr. Houran, Councillor Houran, anything else to add?
No, but could I just suggest that when an opposition party oppose a budget, they put in an alternative budget rather than just saying, I don't like it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
You really didn't listen to me.
Okay. Right, Councillor Joan Watkins, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yes, time is running on, but I do want to make one or two comments, please. I think it's important to reinforce the message that the Westminster government has sent £6 billion. £6 billion to Cardiff Bay, and presumably Cardiff Bay are, I understand, issuing some of that monies to local authorities. So I think it's important that we bear that in mind. I would hope that is the case, and that Cardiff Bay is not just going to be chucking millions more, as I hear today, at Cardiff Airport. However, there are some good things in this budget, things that I would be able to support, but and I would mention particularly increased funding for social services, apprenticeships. I'm very in favour of apprenticeships. They can be an excellent way forward for children to secure good futures. I'm also pleased to hear that voluntary groups may benefit. I manage two groups within a voluntary group, Friendly Me, befriending services for older people. I hope there won't be too much red tape in place so that I can't apply for some funding to support those older people who have been stuck at home for the last 12 months. I'm also pleased to hear that monies will be put in place to support schools. We've got schools, 8 schools, I believe, in debt. I'm trying to manage that issue whilst providing good teaching and learning for our children. Now, having said that, the one thing that I do find objectionable is this increase in council tax. Because, yes, there are people who may be afforded help and assistance if they're on a very low wage, but we've got to look at across the piece. We've got an awful lot of people who have either lost their jobs, been furloughed and had to cope with 20% loss of earnings. We've got businesses that have disappeared or who have absolutely struggled to keep afloat through this pandemic.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Mayor, but Councillor Morris has moved a closure motion in the chat box.
Okay, yeah. Joan, have you an alternative?
I'm almost finished.
Budget.
I'm almost finished. I cannot support this budget on the terms of the 3.7% rising council tax, because I think that will put pressure on an awful lot of people who have already suffered and are suffering substantial pressure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Right, any more people wishing to speak on this debate, please?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Pardon?
Point of order. I have moved a closure. I have moved a closure motion, and that should be the next item debated. The closure motion itself.
I'm just going on the vote. I was, Alan.
There should be no more debate. It's just the closure motion should be the next item of business.
Well, I was going to do that, Alan.
Okay.
There's no one else speaking. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, am I allowed to sum up as I proposed it?
Well, if you proposed it, you are allowed to sum up, yes, because it's your budget. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Morris, for moving the motion there. I'd just like to say, Mr. Mayor, that it's really good and healthy and evidence of strong democracy here in the City of Newport that we can have this level of debate on what is a good budget for the citizens of Newport. This is a budget which prioritises people, it invests in place and sets out the foundations for a green and just recovery, a responsible recovery for all of us, Mr. Mayor. And of course, we're able to do this with a lower council tax, which we also appreciate is important at this time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mudd. Right, nobody else wants to debate, Alan? You okay? Got your camera on. Thank you. Okay, will all councillors please cast their vote now by clicking on the appropriate box in the chat function. I will give all members a short time to cast their vote before confirming the result. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just for the record, can we have it minuted that Councillor Williams and Councillor Mogford were unable to get back into the meeting to speak or vote? So perhaps we just record that in the minutes, please.
Yeah, okay. Would you record that, please, Mr. Jenkins?
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. We have right. We have the vote is in. 28 votes for, against 3, abstentions 8. Thank you. Right. So therefore, the annual report is duly approved. Thank you. Alan, thank you, Alan. You vote, speak. Thank you. Right, item 8, questions to the Leader of the Council. We now move to open questions for the Leader of the Council. Questions will be asked in the order sent out earlier today. Before we start, does the leader have any announcements to make? Leader, thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, colleagues, once again for the excellent debate there. I think, Mr. Mayor, can we ask people to mute their mics? There's some feedback.
Yes, I did ask people to put their mics off. That's 3 times I've asked now. So please, could you make sure your mic is off, please? Thank you. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So last week, Mr Mayor, colleagues, as well as finalising the budget, the Cabinet gave the go-ahead to one of the most exciting projects the Council will have embarked on in recent years. Multi-million pound new leisure and wellbeing centre. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr Mayor, there's still feedback going on here.
Excuse me. Yeah, who's got their mic on, please? Will you all turn your mic, check your mics, please? Thank you. Okay, Lena?
To proceed now, Mr Mayor? Yeah.
Yes, if you would, please. Yes, they're all quiet now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. So yes, Mr Mayor, last week the Cabinet gave the agreement to one of the most exciting projects the Council will have embarked on in recent years, a multi-million pound new leisure and wellbeing centre on a key riverfront site in the city centre, which will also pave the way for a 21st century city centre campus for Coleg Gwent. Together, Mr Mayor, they will bring an investment of more than £100 million of public sector funding into the city centre, bringing with them increased footfall and vibrancy. Now, this will cost the council around £4 million, which seems a small price to pay for what promises to be such a transformation in this part of the city centre, providing first-class leisure facilities for residents and an enhanced learning environment in a fantastic new campus for our young people. We are in challenging times and they will continue, but we cannot stand still or stop striving to improve people's lives. These developments will bring huge benefits for so many people, and we look forward to more engagement with residents as the proposals develop and progress. Our consultation responses have shown that these plans have won the backing of so many people in our city. Now, at the moment, Mr Mayor, the Council is consulting with residents, businesses and community groups on our active travel network map, and this will help us to shape the future of active travel in Newport. And what we'd really like to know is where people would like to see new walking and cycling routes developed, as well as what we can do to improve existing routes. I would urge anyone who hasn't already taken part in this to get involved, as this is a really important piece of work for the city and for future generations. We want to create a greener, more environmentally friendly and above all safer city. And colleagues, if you haven't been on the site to engage with this, I can highly recommend it. It's really interesting, and you can also see what other respondents have commented and the areas they've highlighted that they believe need to change or could be improved. It's an excellent consultation tool. Moving on, Mr Mayor, I must congratulate our planning and regeneration teams who've been nominated for a prestigious award for their work on the innovative Central View housing scheme in Commercial Street. The Council is a finalist in the prestigious Royal Town Planning Institute Awards for Planning Excellence in 2021. It's been shortlisted in the Excellence in Planning category to deliver homes in small schemes. We, Newport, are one of only 2 Welsh councils to make the final of the awards, which attracted entrants from all over the UK in the public and private sector. And Central View, as many members will have seen, I'm sure, when you've been in the city centre, is a high quality housing scheme for over 55s in Commercial Street. And this was developed using funding from Housing Association Pobble Group, the Newport City Council, and also Welsh Government. We find out next month if the entry is chosen as the winner, but in such a high quality field from across the country, just being nominated is a huge honour and worthy of recognition. Now, Mr Mayor, later this month, we will reach an unwelcome milestone. On March the 23rd, it will be a year since the first lockdown was announced because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I suspect that few of us thought we would be living under restrictions 12 months later. It's been such a difficult year for so many people for so many reasons. We're so grateful to those in the emergency services, council staff, shop workers, delivery drivers, and so many more, as you said earlier, Mr. Mayor, who have continued to work on the front line throughout the pandemic. You yourself identified this evening. We are truly grateful for that. Many lives have been impacted, particularly those who've lost a loved one to COVID-19. And many of us here, Mr. Mayor, if not all of us, will have lost a friend or relative, or will know somebody who has. We were contacted by a resident who was part of a group of families who are all in this sad position. I was very moved by her request that we light up one of our public buildings in remembrance on the anniversary, and I'm pleased to share that we will be able to do that on the 23rd of March. Along with other buildings in Wales, the Civic Centre clock tower will be lit up in yellow as a mark of respect. Now, this group, Mr. Mayor, is also asking the public to remember the thousands of Welsh lives that have been lost in a number of ways, such as putting a yellow heart or some daffodils in their window. It will be a time for pause and reflection. Sadly, we've not seen the end of coronavirus and people are still suffering. So I urge everybody, Mr. Mayor, to continue being careful, to abide by the restrictions, to protect themselves and others, and to try and prevent more people from experiencing the pain of those families. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mudd. We will now start the allocation list, please. Councillor Matthew Evans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the Leader of the Council earlier called for UK investment in rail. I think it's timely to remind her it was the UK government who invested in rail electrification for the city, with a new fleet and faster trains, which I hope she welcomes. In 2014, the then Transport Minister, Edwina Hart, announced a £4 million funding package for Newport, some of which was intended for a new footbridge between Devon Place and Queensway to replace the subway. In January 2016, over 5 years ago now, I chased this up again and was told yet another feasibility study was to take place with a view to the bridge being provided in 2016-17. August 2018, guess what? More feasibility studies. While in August 2019, we had the great news that we were targeting completion of the footbridge early in the new financial year, which would have been around this time last year. We were also told that funding had been allocated from Welsh Government for the project. We are now told construction is due to start in this financial year, subject, and I state this, subject to a successful application to Welsh Government. This saga has now been going on for 10 years now, and God knows how much has been spent on study after study after study. So please, can you tell me if you think these constant delays and pushbacks are acceptable, and who is to blame? You, and sorry, I don't mean you personally, or the Welsh Labour government? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, Councillor Mudd, you can maybe answer him.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Evans, for your question. Yes, you're right. The UK government did invest in electrification. It's a shame they stopped it before completion, really, isn't it? So in relation to the footbridge and the progress with the footbridge forms part of our active travel interventions, and it will be installed. So that's the first point to make. But to elaborate on that and to really take the broader point, we started this evening's meeting discussing potential alternatives to another road here in Newport. And active travel forms part of this sustainable solution to this. We know we've had the South East Wales Transport Commission report, who've made a number of recommendations in terms of Newport. and the surrounding areas, investment in railway stations, investment in rail, investment in road infrastructure, and also investment in highways and public transport. And a number of those projects will be ongoing very soon. As you're aware, we've signed a memorandum of understanding with the Welsh Government and Transport for Wales, and these projects will be delivered through the delivery unit. And of course, the footbridge forms an important aspect of that. So, and I'm sure that if you've read the report, and many colleagues on this call will have read it, there's also proposals there to look at the access and egress to the railway station and the experience of the public transport user there. So I wouldn't worry about it, Councillor Evans. The bridge is on track to be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mudd.
Supplementary, please, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, if you may. Yes.
I mean, thank you for that. It does worry me when some people say something's back on track, because for 10 years it's been derailed. So we didn't quite get an answer to the question of why. And you've got to remember, you know, this should tick all the boxes. The UK government has done the electrification. This is a gateway from Gold Tops into the city centre. It's encouraged people to walk, and yet it still hasn't been completed after 10 years. So, you know, whose responsibility is it? And if you talk to residents who use the subway, I mean, it's a shocking state of repair. And I'm not blaming the cleaners for that, but, you know, you see the drug takers down there. It's a haven for drug dealers. It's not safe. So as far as crime goes and things like that, it's really deeply unpleasant. And I think it's important to recognise that, you know, this is an issue which needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency, or should have been addressed as a matter of urgency. And yet we still haven't had the notification. It's subject to a successful application. So is this money going to be spent? Do we have to do more feasibility studies? Do we have to write more reports? And can she give a commitment on when it's going to be completed? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Thank you, Councillor Mudd.
Would you like me to respond, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, as I said, it's actually part of a broader intervention, because we understand that we need to do this. And actually, the electrification programme, as I'm sure you were all aware from your visits to the city centre or the railway station, the electrification programme has acted to delay this somewhat because of those overhead power cables. So that's actually quite an important point to note. But I'm really pleased to share with you that contractors have been appointed on this project. So we have been progressing the work on this, and the work on the pre-construction works on the footbridge have actually already begun. So rest assured, as I said, Councillor Evans, this footbridge is well on track to be delivered. Now, it's been slightly delayed by COVID, as of all our construction projects, and I think it's important to note here that anything that is something that is developed where we need human resource to do that, we're all human and none of us are immune to COVID, and it has delayed progress with a number of different actions and activities during this time. But rest assured, this bridge is on track. And I think it's important to note, in terms of developing a really robust understanding of this project and the processes involved, Mr. Mayor, that railway lines can only actually be closed twice a year, and we will need to close the railway lines to undertake the project. So no need to fear, that project is well underway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mudd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the point of clarification, so the question about the funding application to Welsh Government, has that has been approved then? Because I've been told it's subject to a successful application.
We've put a number of applications in relation to this because we're also doing some improvements in terms of active travel in the Devon Place area as well. But I'm happy to provide a written response on the exact position.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Evans. Thank you, Councillor Mudd. Second question, Councillor Kevin Whitehead, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello, Leader. You're doing great thus far. This Friday, we'll be doing another litter pick in a problematic area on the estate. It has been noted that during the pandemic in particular, that there are problem areas in different wards, and we do face a challenge individually as wards and collectively, I suppose, as a council. It's a two-part question, really, I suppose. The first is a reassurance of the leader around positive actions over the fly tipping. It was touched on earlier on, and that would conclude in producing updates for the general public via social media, willing to share that type of information, that the results of them positive actions, so people can actually see that these fly tippers who are the bane, they are being actively pursued, chased down and prosecuted. So that would be a good thing to do. And then obviously during our scrutinies, we've been talking about this forum, the Newport-wide forum of likewise groups. I mean, God bless Pride and Pill. I do think they're like the pioneers in this area. We emulated them, albeit we're Pride and Bettis. And fair play to the Gare. The Gare today, Russell Jones up in the Gare was cleaning out a problem area up there, the Dingle. So, you know, it's a good disease to spread as regards taking this on. We're open now through scrutiny to create a citywide forum alongside all the service providers. And we would just like your assurance that you would fully come on board with that. There may be minimal funding, I don't know. I mean, you've been generous in the budget this year. Hopefully there's a few pennies to spare. And so, you know, to end on the meeting on a positive, would you encourage your brilliant officers to get involved with that with us and the groups? And then going forward, we may well see not just little differences, which we do impact in our wards, but we might see big differences, and then that would encourage a good genetic behaviour amongst the wards, albeit through school education and things like that. It's just, I think, a good thing to adopt, and it would be lovely if all of us come together on it and pushed it forward. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mudd, you may answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you know, Councillor Whitehead, and this is something I suppose that we share. It's something we share as individuals. I apologise to colleagues for it, but you said Dingle, and you just fill me full of nostalgia there when you talk about the Dingle. And of course, here in our own ward in Malpas, we litter pick with residents regularly, and in fact, our Dingles, we go out there with the pupils from the school as well. So we love a Dingle, but you're right, they are hotspots for problems like fly tipping. So and there is a difference, isn't there, between general litter accumulating to fly tipping, and it's a serious problem across the whole of the UK. We recognise that. So just to give you an idea of where some of this extra investment will be in terms of what we're doing with this, the extra investment in this, it will enable us to get an extra van and additional crew members. And what this will enable us to do is collect on a 7-day-a-week basis. So I know some of the challenges that we have at the moment are around not always having a crew available to collect, because people do need some time off work. So that's one of the things that we'll be able to do through this investment. And you know, before we talked today about the kind of pre-lockdown period, a year ago we were just at a point where we were preparing a whole day session for all of our volunteer groups to work with them and celebrate the work that they do, and also give them some advice and guidance on some of the activities that they undertake. I'm not sure whether many people are aware of this, but there is actually an issue around accessing land and land ownership. So I think one of the most prominent examples we've had of this more recently is the Sainsbury's site, where some well-intentioned, very well-intentioned individuals accessed that site, but it was a private site. And there are issues around insurance and access to private sites. And we're going to share all of this information with all of the groups, because everybody has got the best intentions of this city at heart. And we want to make sure that we can address this. So it is something that we're going to do. And hopefully we will be able to work with all of these groups. Now, another aspect of this, and this is also something that's come up recently, and I'd just like to highlight it, if I may, as you've asked the question about it, is that in terms of having the crews available and the extra vehicles to pick up the litter, we can do that, but the location of the litter is also an aspect of this. So what we can't do on a road that's got a 50-mile-an-hour limit is send our staff out there to collect it without a traffic order to close the lane of the road. So we need to be a little bit better organised, working together and collaborating on this. All of our partners, our volunteer groups, in terms of where we collect from, where stuff and bags of rubbish can be left in order for us to collect them. But absolutely, Councillor Whitehead, you know, we've made a clear commitment in this budget, and that is about investing in our city and investing in resources that address fly tipping and eyesores. And part of that is all about support for groups and a citywide forum and getting behind people, and we will do that. But I want to emphasise another important aspect of that, Councillor Whitehead, which is also
Councillor Mudd, the time is up now.
Could I just finish the point?
Yes, if you would finish the point, right. Yes, that's all.
So as well as that support and support for groups and that commitment to doing this, we are also committed to enforcement. We've had a record number of fines for fly tipping over the past year. We'll continue to do this, and I'd just like to share with members that there are ongoing prosecutions around particular sites in the city that are incredibly problematic, that have been in the media. But I don't want anyone to think it's not being addressed, and Mr. Mayor, you'll be familiar with this area. There are ongoing actions, as Superintendent Richards alluded to when he spoke earlier this evening. So thank you for your question, Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you. The time's up. So Councillor Carmel Townsend, Councillor Jason Hughes, Councillor Yvonne Forsey, would you put your questions in writing to the leader, please, and you will have an answer. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 9, questions to Cabinet members. There are no questions to Cabinet members on this occasion. That concludes the business set out on the agenda. The date for the next council is, it says Wednesday, March the 3rd here, but it's March the 3rd now, isn't it?
27th of April, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, so may I ask a question? When is the next council meeting, please?
27th of April, Mr. Mayor.
27th of April. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well done.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.